Chapter 4183. In the distant sky above the huge Hushu city, a black mass of soldiers was approaching. Ling Xinghai and Zhu Yangqi stood side by side in front of the shocking army. Their auras were like rainbows, and their auras were vast. In the void behind them, a huge Qian Kuan world floated. Surging tribulation energy ceaselessly surged out from the Qian world. It was like numerous strange lightning snakes that flashed about wantonly. The two huge Qian Kuan worlds spanned across the sky above the Hushu city. To most of the cultivators in the city, it was like choking their throats. The auras of the great tribulation of heaven and earth experts were simply too much pressure for them. Disciple, are you sure you can handle the two of them alone? Shan Lingyun's watery eyes were filled with worry. Although she knew that Zhuan's strength was not weaker than the experts of the great tribulation of heaven and earth, she was still a little worried when facing two late-stage experts of the great tribulation of heaven and earth. Lord Zhua, I am willing to share the burden with you. Saiko Hongfei also hurriedly stepped forward and respectfully asked for instructions. Zhuowen waved his hand. Before he could speak, Duan Jiping, who was standing beside him, smiled faintly and said, "Don't underestimate Brother Zhua's strength. Not to mention two late-stage experts of the great tribulation of heaven and earth. He is not even afraid of peak experts of the great tribulation of heaven and earth." Saiko Hongfei's heart trembled, and then he secretly shook his head, thinking that Duan Jiping was exaggerating. Zhuowen patted Shan Lingyun's little head, then leaped out of the city and landed in front of Zhu Yangqi and Ling Xinghai. Countless cultivators in the Hushu city were in an uproar. They did not expect that Zhuowen would actually do as he said. He really planned to fight two late-stage experts of the great tribulation of heaven and earth alone. Lord Zhua is too impulsive. How can he fight Zhu Yangqi and Ling Xinghai like this? What should we do? Lord Zhua is the great benefactor who liberated the Hushu region. We can't just watch as he enters the tiger's den. If Lord Zhua dies because of this, we will fight Zhu Yangqi and Ling Xinghai, even if we die. In the Divine City, countless cultivators let go of the fear in their hearts and prepare to fight with the two great clans. The moment Zhuo had liberated Hushu City, his reputation in their hearts had soared to godlike heights. Zhuowen, I really admire you. Not only do you have the arrogance to talk big, but you also have the courage to court death. Zhu Yangqi's gaze was incomparably cold as he spoke in a strange tone. But Zhuowen shook his head and said, "You're wrong here. I should be the one admiring the both of you." Admire us? What do you mean? Ling Xinghai frowned and asked. "I admire you guys for not taking the path to heaven and entering the gates of hell." Zhuowen shrugged. Zhu Yangqi and Ling Xinghai were thoroughly enraged by Zhuowen's words. This kid's cultivation was clearly not strong, but he had repeatedly despised and angered them. Did they really think that they were pushovers who could be easily manipulated? Little bastard, come and die. Zhu Yangqi was the first to be unable to restrain himself. He soared through the air, his entire body ignited with an inextinguishable, terrifying flame. The vast universe world behind him was filled with densely packed heavenly fire mines, as well as gigantic volcanoes that spewed lava. Wherever Zhu Yangqi passed, matter would vaporize and space would burn into nothingness. His momentum was exceptionally terrifying. Ling Xinghai leaped into the air, drawing an arc in the air, and circled behind Zhuowen, blocking the space between Zhuowen and the Divine City. His palm flickered with extremely dense starlight, causing people to have no doubt that if he were to strike with his palm, it would definitely be terrifying. Are you guys still so arrogant? I've already given you so many chances, but unfortunately, you guys can't even grasp a single one. Zhuowen saw that Ling Xinghai had only cut off his path of retreat and did not attack together with Zhu Yangqi, and could not help but shake his head. Ling Xinghai sneered again and again, thinking that Zhuowen was just boasting because of his pride. Boom, boom, boom. Zhu Yangqi's speed was extremely fast, bringing along a terrifyingly high-temperature wave of air. He arrived in front of Zhuowen in the blink of an eye. He smashed his fist over, and the momentum of his fist burned with surging heavenly fire, as if it would never be extinguished. Zhuan's expression was calm. He slowly raised his right hand, opened his 5 fingers, and pinched Zhu Yanqi's imposing fist. After that, countless cultivators inside and outside the divine city were shocked to discover that Zhu Yanqi's fist, which was enough to shock the heavens and make ghosts and gods cry, was actually casually pinched by Zhuan and could not move at all. Zhu Yanqi's pupils constricted. He roared and wanted to withdraw his right fist, but he found that his right fist seemed to have sunk into a swamp, and he could not pull it out. Late stage of the universe tribulation? It's indeed a little weak. Zhuan's expression was calm. The corners of his mouth curled up, and he said a mocking sentence that almost made Zhu Yanqi vomit blood. "You're dead." Zhu Yanqi felt that he had been greatly insulted. His eyes turned blood red, and his left fist and legs turned into terrifying weapons, smashing towards Zhuan's vital points. At the same time, Zhu Yanqi's entire body burned with extremely terrifying flames, enveloping Zhuan's entire body. In addition, Zhu Yanqi did not stop. In the universe world behind him, countless volcanoes erupted, and magma spewed out, condensing in the sky, turning into a flood dragon formed from magma. The flood dragon was extraordinary. Its scales were clearly visible, and a pair of fiery, divine wings grew out of its back. The flood dragon roared and rushed out of the Qian world. It swooped down and opened its bloody mouth, wanting to swallow Zhuan. Zhuan sneered, but he did not do anything. Zhu Yanqi laughed complacently. His limbs were like weapons, and he began to attack Zhuan fiercely, making it impossible for him to defend against the huge flood dragon that was about to crush him. Zhuan naturally saw through Zhu Yanqi's intention, but he did not say anything. He just dealt with it as it came, completely ignoring the huge flood dragon that was getting closer and closer. "Be careful!" The people in Hushu Divine City cried out in alarm and warned Zhuan. Too late. Zhu Yanqi laughed wanly. The flood dragon was only a foot away from Zhuan. In half a breath's time, it would completely penetrate Zhuan's body. Under countless shocked gazes, the flood dragon roared. When it was finally about to completely penetrate Zhuan's body, a sword light soared into the sky. The sword light illuminated the sky, and the sword chi swept across a radius of hundreds of millions of miles. Then, the imposing flood dragon's body froze in the void. The huge flood dragon's head that was a foot away from Zhuan's back suddenly tilted, and the huge dragon's head was chopped off. It fell from the sky and finally fell to the ground. The huge dragon's body melted into countless drops of magma, dispersing into countless black, solidified magma in the air. Chapter 4184. Zhu Yanqi was shocked. He stared at the Taiyu sacred sword, his heart pounding violently. He could clearly sense the aura of death on the sword. The sword was too dangerous, enough to threaten his life. Zhu Yanqi roared and stopped bothering Zhuan. He quickly retreated. Slash! Zhuan hovered in the air and looked coldly at Zhu Yanqi. He pinched the sword fingers on his right hand and slashed down. The Taiyu Saint's sword turned into a streak of sword light and descended from the sky, landing heavily on Zhu Yanqi's head. Zhu Yanqi could not dodge and could only use the Qian world to block in front of him. Boom! The sword light soared into the sky, its power shattering the void. The moment it landed on the Qian world, it completely shook it. The universal world was on the verge of collapse. Then it completely collapsed, turning into countless energy fragments. Under Zhu Yanqi's fearful gaze, the sword light turned into a ray of light and completely pierced through Zhu Yanqi's forehead. Zhu Yanqi stared at Zhuan. His soul was completely crushed by the Taiyu sacred sword, and he fell from the sky with his eyes wide open. When his body finally hit the ground, it was torn apart and turned into countless fine powder. He couldn't be more dead. Countless cultivators in the divine city were petrified. They were so quiet that it was a mess. They stared at the disappearing body of Zhu Yanqi. Their mouths were agape, but no words came out. Originally, Ling Xinghai had been standing between Zhuo Wan and God City with his arms crossed across his chest. But now, the playful smile on his face had long since disappeared. Instead, it was replaced with shock and deep fear. Zhu Yanqi was dead just like that. Ling Xinghai suddenly felt a sharp gaze directed at him. His neck stiffened as he slowly raised his head to look at Zhuo Wan. Zhuo Wan was staring coldly at him, grinning at him. Ling Xinghai's hair stood on end. He couldn't help but take dozens of steps back. Ling Xinghai, now it's your turn. Zhuo Wan slowly walked towards Ling Xinghai, his calm voice reverberating between heaven and earth. Ling Xinghai's face was gloomy. He retreated again and said with some resentment, "You hid your cultivation. You are really shrewd. If not for Brother Zhu's carelessness, how could you have killed him so easily?" Zhuo Wan's footsteps did not stop as he said casually, "Ling Xinghai, haven't I already told you? Neither one of you is qualified to fight me. If you join forces, you might just be qualified. However, you didn't listen to my opinion and insisted on fighting me one-on-one. Therefore, your deaths are not worth regretting." Ling Xinghai's face was gloomy as he said in a low voice, "Zhuo Wan, let's talk. If you let us go, I'll immediately withdraw from the Hushuan realm with my army and give you my purple mirage's treasury." Zhuo Wan wasn't surprised by Ling Xinghai's surrender. He just shook his head and said with a smile, "I can only show you mercy once. If you miss it, you've missed it. Today, you and your army will die here." Ling Xinghai's face changed drastically. He suddenly shouted, "Everyone, listen to my order. Kill this kid together. I will reward you handsomely after this." As soon as Ling Xinghai's words left his mouth, the 50,000-strong army of the Purple Illusion clan rushed over in unison, and a series of terrifying attacks were launched toward Zhuo Wan. How despicable! Ling Xinghai was deliberately stalling for time just now. In fact, he was secretly communicating with the 50,000 soldiers to encircle senior brother Zhuo. Inside Hushuan Divine City, Same couldn't help but curse when she saw this scene. Countless cultivators in Hushuan Divine City also cursed Ling Xinghai for being despicable and shameless. He went back on his word and even mobilized his army to encircle Zhuo Wan. Ling Xinghai naturally didn't have time to pay attention to the curses in Hushuan Divine City. After the 50,000 soldiers launched their attack, he also launched a thunderous attack, hoping to completely destroy Zhuo Wan under this joint attack. Ling Xinghai summoned the Qinquan world. Mysterious starlight swept out from the Qinquan world and poured into Zhuo Wan's head like rivers flowing into the sea. At the same time, the attacks of the 50,000 soldiers swept over and landed heavily on Zhuo Wan's body. Immediately, with Zhuo Wan at the center, the area within a radius of several thousand kilometers was filled with multicolored light. Afterwards, terrifying explosions rang out endlessly. "Kill!" Ling Xinghai roared, and the army of 50,000 rushed over. Not long after the attack was launched, they rushed towards Zhuo Wan to kill him. But soon, Ling Xinghai was shocked to find that the 50,000 soldiers exploded into clouds of blood mist as soon as they came within a few hundred feet of Zhuo Wan. He also finally found that a few hundred feet away from Zhuo Wan, the brilliance of formation runes was circulating and emitting a terrifying aura. These formation runes were like a meat grinder. As long as the 50,000 soldiers came close, they would be crushed into powder. In a blink of an eye, 10,000 soldiers were unknowingly crushed into powder by these dense formation runes. No one knew whether they were dead or alive. The remaining 40,000 soldiers were scared out of their wits. They didn't dare to charge forward and retreated. "Since you're here, don't leave." An indifferent voice came from the core of the explosion. The densely packed formation runes rushed out like swimming fish, completely enveloping the army of 40,000. Inside the endless formation runes, screams rose and fell. A large number of cultivators were crushed by the formation runes at every moment. A figure floated out from the explosion. He was surrounded by a powerful divine sword that shielded him from the terrifying energy of the explosion. So powerful. This is Master Zhuo's real strength. In the divine city of Hushu, countless cultivators stared at the slender figure walking out of the explosion with burning admiration in their eyes. This moment, this figure, would be unforgettable and engraved in their hearts. Ling Xinghai was completely scared out of his wits. He couldn't care less about his 50,000 soldiers. Like a stray dog, he fled into the distance. Ling Xinghai, you can't escape either. Zhuan looked at Ling Xinghai's back. He used 2 fingers of his right hand as a sword and pointed at his forehead. His powerful spirit condensed into the shape of a sword that was dozens of feet long. He flicked his finger, and the huge spirit sword intent broke through the air and disappeared into the distance. The spirit was much faster than the body. The spirit sword intent was formed by the spirit. It was so fast that even the Taiyu sacred sword couldn't compare to it. Moreover, Zhuowen's spirit had already reached the peak of the great tribulation of universe. The spirit sword intent he created now was so powerful that even a peak great tribulation of universe expert spirit would be severely injured if they took it head-on. Ling Xinghai was only at the late stage of the great tribulation of universe. How could he withstand Zhuowen's terrifying spirit sword intent? Chapter 4185. Ling Xinghai, who was running away, suddenly stopped in midair. He covered his head with both hands, and his body trembled violently as he let out a series of shrill screams. Everyone looked over and was horrified to find that Ling Xinghai's face was ferocious and bleeding from his 7 orifices. He looked like a terrifying ghost that had crawled out of hell. Ling Xinghai clutched his head as he stared at Zhuowen. His bloodshot eyes were filled with regret and begging for mercy. Unfortunately, Zhuowen's expression was calm. He just looked at Ling Xinghai silently and had no intention of letting him go. Ling Xinghai let out a sorrowful cry and suddenly closed his eyes. His stalwart body fell powerlessly from midair and crashed heavily on the ground. Boom! Because of Ling Xinghai's fall, the entire ground shook violently. The Qian Kuan world that had been floating behind Ling Xinghai also collapsed because of this. It dimmed and dissipated with his death. After Zhuowen completely dealt with Ling Xinghai, not far away, the army that was trapped by countless formation patterns was completely crushed. Not a single one survived. The sky, which was originally covered by the black mass of the army, was revealed after the clouds and mist parted. Only a figure was left standing there quietly, like a god that had descended to the mortal world. Inside and outside the divine city, there was silence. Everyone's eyes were filled with worship and reverence. It was unbelievable that an ancient star could shake the great Liberty realm. Today, they had broadened their horizons by witnessing such a grand occasion. Even the peerless genius who ranked first on the outer world heavenly list might not be able to match Zhuowen's demeanor today. On the city wall, Psycho Hongfei clenched and unclenched his fists. His palms were already covered in sweat. He looked at the figure standing in the void with a complicated and bitter smile on his face. He had still underestimated Zhuowen. The young man who had fought him with great difficulty when he was seriously injured had grown so fast that even he found it unbelievable. In front of Hushu Divine City, he had killed 2 supreme experts in the late stage of the Qian Kuan tribulation with a single sword strike. Such strength and demeanor made Saiku Hongfei feel ashamed of his inferiority. In Saiku Hongfei's heart, he was even more afraid and wary of Zhuowen. He no longer had any other thoughts. F***CK. Zhuowen, how could he be this strong? Is there something wrong with my eyes? Hong Shenwu shouted loudly, his eyes wide open, expressing the disbelief in his chest. Inside the city walls, the other people were not shocked by Hong Shenwu's loss of composure because they were also deeply shocked. How could they have the mind to care about Hong Shenwu? Luo Lingyu's cherry lips were also slightly agape, unable to utter a single word for a long time. The 4 Shenzhen sect masters looked as if they had seen a ghost, and the reverence they had for Zhuowen in their hearts grew countless times stronger. On the other hand, Shan Lingyun was smiling heartlessly. Her smile was filled with pride and arrogance. She was just short of pointing at Zhuan and showing off to others that he was her disciple, the disciple that she had taught. Zhuan strolled leisurely and slowly landed on the city wall. He was immediately surrounded by a group of people. Psycho Hongfei hurried forward and prostrated himself before Zhuan, begging for forgiveness. "My lord, Psycho is guilty. My lord, please punish Psycho." Zhuan smiled as he looked at Psycho Hongfei, who was kneeling on the ground in fear and trepidation, and asked, "Guilty? Then do you know how you are guilty?" Psycho Hongfei braced himself and said, "Previously, when you said that you could get rid of Zhu Yangqi and Ling Xinghai, I was filled with disdain and was very suspicious of you. This is Psycho's great crime." Zhuan looked at Psycho Hongfei indifferently. He was no longer a newborn calf, so he naturally understood the meaning behind Psycho Hongfei's words. Psycho Hongfei was afraid that his lack of effort would make Zhuan feel uncomfortable, so he used this opportunity to ask for forgiveness. At the same time, he also had the intention of confiding in Zhuan. Zhuan stretched out his hands and helped Psycho Hongfei up. He smiled and said, "This small matter is not worth mentioning. As long as you sincerely work for me from now on, I will naturally fulfill my promise to you." Psycho Hongfei was very clever. When he heard that there was hope, he immediately cupped his hands towards Zhuan and said gratefully, "Thank you for your magnanimity, my lord. This lowly one is willing to offer the Jinshui clan's treasury with both hands. Please kindly accept it, Lord Zhua." Psycho Hongfei added icing on the cake and quickly brought up the matter of offering the treasury. Zhuan's eyes flashed as he shook his head and said, "This is not enough." Psycho Hongfei's face stiffened. He braced himself and asked carefully, "My lord, what do you mean? One treasury is not enough. Have you forgotten about the purple mirage and God's eyes treasury?" Zhuan said with a faint smile. Psycho Hongfei quickly nodded and said, "You are right, my lord. I will personally lead the Jinshui clan's army to the purple mirage and God's eye domains to retrieve their treasuries for you, my lord. In the future, the Jinshui clan will be Huxley's vassal clan. What do you think of my proposal, my lord?" Psycho Hongfei looked at Zhuan with a flattering smile on his face. He rubbed his hands and said with a covetous tone, "I will send people from the Hushu clan to go with you to the purple mirage and God's eyes treasury. Also, if there are people from the two clans who are willing to surrender, there is no need to kill them all. Collect their soul imprints for Huxley's use. Do you understand?" Zhuan reminded. Psycho Hongfei nodded repeatedly. How would he dare to refute Zhuan? Naturally, he would listen to Zhuan. "Now you may go." Zhuan waved his hand. Psycho Hongfei understood and retreated. He prepared to return to the Jinshui clan and lead the Jinshui clan's elite army to attack the Purple Mirage and God's Eye domains. After losing Ling Xinghai, Zhu Yangqi, and their elite army, the Purple Mirage and God's Eye domains had lost less than 10% of their combat power. With Psycho Hongfei's strength and the Jinshui clan's elite army's combat power, conquering the two domains would not be a big problem. After Psycho Hongfei left, Zhuan sent Sa, Mei, and Tua Sheng to accompany Psycho Hongfei to the Purple Mirage and God's Eye domains. Although Psycho Hongfei's soul imprints were under Zhuan's control, he did not dare to act rashly. However, after conquering the Purple Mirage and God's Eye domains, if this old man did something in secret or did whatever he wanted without anyone's supervision, it would be troublesome for Zhuan. This was why he sent Sa, Mei, and Ta Sheng to travel with him. Their main purpose was to supervise him. After dealing with Psycho Hongfei, Zhuan turned around and found that everyone on the city wall was staring at him. That gaze was like that of a hungry wolf that suddenly saw a delicious prey after being starved for many days. It made Zhuan feel an inexplicable chill. "Zhuan, you have to give me a good explanation now. I didn't expect you to be so powerful." Chapter 4186. The crisis of the Hushu Divine City finally ended with the destruction of the Purple Mirage and God's Eye armies. Zhuowen's heroic demeanor of killing 2 experts with 1 sword was deeply engraved in the hearts of countless cultivators in the Divine City. Word of mouth spread throughout the entire domain. For a while, the streets and alleys of the Hushu Divine region were basically discussing Zhuowen's heroic deeds. Many juniors regarded Zhuowen as their idol and diligently cultivated, hoping that one day they could catch up with Zhuowen and become a legendary figure like Zhuowen who could destroy the universe with an ancient star. 10 days later, news came from the Purple Mirage and Divine regions that the divine cities of the 2 regions had been completely breached. The elite army of the Jinshui clan had marched in and completely defeated the armies of the 2 clans. Furthermore, they had completely submitted to Huxley. Saika Hongfei also knew how to conduct himself. After conquering the 2 domains, he did not covet the resources of the 2 clans in the slightest. Instead, he obediently handed them over and did not dare to embezzle any of it. Of course, with the supervision of Sa Mei and Tuo Sheng, even if he wanted to take all for himself, he did not have the guts to do so. After completely conquering the Purple Mirage and Divine regions, Shan Lingyun did not blindly suppress the 2 regions with bloodshed. Instead, she adopted a policy of conciliation and used virtue to win people over. It was precisely this policy that caused many living beings in the 2 regions to not have much hatred for Huxley, who had invaded their territories. At the same time, Huxley also accepted the higher-ups of the 3 clans. However, the condition was that the higher-ups of the 3 clans had to swear a heavenly Tao oath in advance that they would never betray Huxley. With Zhuowen personally supervising and holding the fort, the higher-ups of the 3 clans, including Saiko Hongfei, did not dare to play any tricks. They all obediently swore a heavenly Tao oath. From then on, the Purple Mirage, Divine Eye, and Jinshui Divine regions ruled over Huxley, and the 4 regions formed a close and firm alliance. Zhuowen also fulfilled his promise and returned Saiko Hongfei's soul imprint to the latter. Saiko Hongfei had already swore a heavenly Tao oath and posed no threat to Huxley. Therefore, Huxley naturally had no reason to continue controlling Saiko Hongfei's soul imprint. After the Huxley Divine regions had completely integrated the Jinshui Divine regions, Zhuowen planned to leave the Huxley realm. The Divine regions. Zhuo and Duan Jiping stood side by side on top of the city wall. Behind them, a large group of people came to send them off. Almost all of the upper echelons of the Hushu clan, including Sam Mei, Tuo Sheng, Hong Shunwu, and Luo Lingyu, had come. Shan Lingyun stood at the front of the group and walked to Zhuowen's side slowly. She held Zhuowen's big hand and curled her lips. "My disciple, you promised me that I would go with you. You need to know that my ability to speak words is far superior to yours. Going to the Nuwa clan will be of great help to you." Zhuowen face-palmed. He did not want Shan Lingyun to go with him. After all, it was not safe to go to the Nuwa Divine regions. Although Shan Lingyun's soul imprint was unparalleled in the world, she was still too weak. He was afraid that he would not have time to take care of Shan Lingyun when he was in danger, which would lead to a tragedy. However, Shan Lingyun was very stubborn. She insisted on going with Zhuowen to the Nuwa Divine regions. This made Zhuowen feel helpless. "Master, you're now the leader of Huxley. Huxley is still in the ascendant. As the leader, if you leave just like that, isn't it?" Zhuowen said hesitantly. Shan Lingyun grinned and said, "Disciple, don't worry about this. Sister Lingyu and Sa Mei are both smart. They know more about management than I do. With them around, Huxley will develop and grow in an orderly manner even if I am not around." Zhuowen looked at Luo Lingyu and Sa Mei, who were standing behind him, and smiled bitterly in his heart. "Since that is the case, I will bring you along. However, you must listen to me and not act on your own," Zhuowen said solemnly. The little lowly giggled and jumped up to sit on Zhuowen's neck. Her small arms rested on Zhuowen's head as she said, all right, I will listen to you. You are so long-winded. I'm starting to wonder if you are the master or I am." Zhuowen was helpless against his cheap master's shameless behavior. He could only hold the little girl's feet in place to prevent her from falling. Everyone, take care. Zhuowen's gaze fell on the people who were standing on the city wall to send him off. His expression was solemn as he bowed to the crowd. Everyone hurriedly returned the greeting. Hong Shenwu even stepped forward and patted Zhuowen heavily on the shoulder. The smile on his face was gone as he said, "Zhuowen, when you go to the New realm, don't cause any trouble. You must come back alive. When the time comes, you and I will. Let's get drunk." Zhuowen laughed and said, "Of course." After he finished speaking, he summoned a divine ship. After he stepped onto the deck, he took a deep look at the people on the city wall. Then he activated the divine ship, which turned into a stream of light and disappeared into the distance. This divine ship had been reinforced by Zhuowen's array patterns, and its speed was several times faster than before. Although the New realm was quite far away from the Hushu realm, it would only take 2 months for the ship to reach the New realm. While Zhuowen was on his way to the New realm, the divine Magus realm in the south of the 100 extraterritorial realms had become a hell on earth. The living beings of the sorcerer realm were being slaughtered wantonly. Wails, cries, and the sounds of slaughter merged together, forming an ear-piercing and terrifying sound. The core of the sorcerer world, the sorcerer's sacred city, had been reduced to rubble. On top of the ruins, skulls were piled up together, forming small mountains of skulls. It was a hideous and terrifying sight to behold. In front of the small mountain of skulls, Mo, Mo, Liuhua, and Lu Yingying were kneeling on the ground, trembling. In front of the 3 of them were 2 figures. One of them was wearing a feather robe. His eyes were sinister, and his face was pale. It was obvious that he had suffered serious injuries. The man in the feather robe was one of the Dharma powerhouses of the Nuwa clan, Shunyu. Previously, he had been defeated by the joint forces of Zhuowen and Duan Jiping. He had almost been killed, and his injuries were extremely serious. Although he had managed to return to the Nuwa clan, he had paid a heavy price to save his life. However, his injuries were not easily healed, and his strength had decreased significantly. This made Shunyu hate Zhuowen and Duan Jiping to the core, and he hated the divine Magus clan as well. He knew that when he was fighting with Duan Jiping, Mo, Faiyu, and the rest were watching from afar. They did not help at all. The man next to Shunyu was tall and slender. He wore a white satin robe and carried a black sword case on his back. There was fear in the depth of God bless his eyes when he looked at the man who was carrying a sword case on his back. Chapter 4187. Lord Jianluo, Lord Xinyu, we, the Witchcraft God Clan, know our mistake. Please be merciful and leave us a way out. Please don't kill any more of my clansmen. Mo Fengyu knelt on the ground and kept kowtowing to Jianluo, who was carrying a sword case, and Xinyu, who was wearing a feathered robe. His forehead was bleeding from the kowtowing. Mo Liuhua and Lu Yingying knelt on the ground, trembling. They did not dare to say a word. They had seen with their own eyes how powerful Jianluo was with the sword box on his back. He had killed all the experts of the Witchcraft God Clan with one strike. The Hill of Skulls was Jianluo's masterpiece. If Jianluo had not killed all of them, the 3 of them would have died and become part of the Hill of Skulls. Speak. Where did Zhuowen come from? Where is he now? Jianluo put his hands behind his back and looked down coldly at Mo Fengyu and the other 2 kneeling in front of him. His voice was emotionless and cold. Mo Fengyu smiled bitterly. He braced himself and said, Lord Jianluo, I really don't know. I only hope that you can show mercy. If that's the case, you'd better die. Jianluo's expression was calm. He pointed the sword finger of his right hand at the void. The entire space rippled violently. Jianluo's sword finger on his right hand surged with a monstrous sword essence. It shot out and penetrated Mo Fengyu's glabella. Mo Fengyu's eyes were wide open. He died with a grievance. Mo Liuhua and Lu Yingying were shocked. They wanted to get up and kowtow to beg for mercy. Unfortunately, after the sword essence destroyed Mo Fengyu's aura, it shot out and penetrated their glabella, extinguishing their auras as well. After killing the 3 of them with a single finger, Jian Luo remained calm and expressionless. Shin Yu stood behind Jian Luo and said fearfully, Jian Luo, you've killed almost all of the Witchcraft God clan members. Even Mo Fengyu is dead. But there's no news about Zhuowen and Duan Jiping. What should we do next? Jian Luo furrowed his brows. He wasn't interested in Zhuowen. The only person he cared about was Duan Jiping. After all, Duan Jiping had the most precious treasure of the Nuwa clan, the Dark Chakra, which was the most important treasure of the clan leader. To put it bluntly, anyone in Nuwa clan who could find the Dark Chakra for the clan leader would be greatly rewarded. Not only would he or she have a meteoric rise in the future, he or she would also be favored by the clan leader, and his or her future would be limitless. Volume. That was why Jian Luo had brought God Bless to the Witchcraft boundary as soon as he found out that Duan Jiping and Zhuowen were severely injured. Fortunately, Jian Luo had arrived just in time, just as Mo Fengyu was preparing to migrate. Mo Fengyu clearly hadn't expected the experts of the Nuwa clan to arrive so quickly, catching them off guard. Jian Luo was the most bloodthirsty person among all the Cosmic Dharma Law's experts in the Nuwa clan. He killed people as easily as he was cutting grass. When he found out that the Witchcraft boundary had dared to migrate, Jian Luo had attacked immediately and killed almost all the core members of the Witchcraft boundary, leaving only Mo Fengyu and the other two alive. However, Jian Luo was disappointed that Mo Fengyu and the other two were completely unaware of Zhuowen and Duan Jiping's whereabouts. God bless. Do you know what a huge mistake you've made? You didn't inform the clan leader immediately when you found out about Duan Jiping's whereabouts. If the clan leader finds out about this, do you know what will happen to you? Jian Luo glanced coldly at God Bless, who was standing behind him uneasily, and said coldly. God Bless's face was as pale as a sheet. His lips trembled as he braced himself and said, Brother Jian Luo, I hope you can help me keep this a secret. As long as you're willing to keep it a secret from me, Brother Jian Luo, God Bless will go through fire and water to help you find Duan Jiping. After we kill Duan Jiping, the credit for obtaining the Dark Chakra will belong to you, Brother Jian Luo. God Bless won't take any of it. Jian Luo glanced at God Bless, who was submissive, and nodded in his heart. God Bless was a high-ranking member of the Nuwa clan, just like him. His status was high. Since God Bless had given in, Jian Luo naturally wouldn't force him. Moreover, Jian Luo's intention was to hint God Bless not to fight for the credit with him. Since God Bless had already understood, Jian Luo naturally wouldn't push his luck. Brother God Bless, you're too kind. I still need your help to find Duan Jiping. If we're lucky enough to capture Duan Jiping, I won't take all the credit for myself. Jian Luo said courteously. God Bless was grateful, but he was cursing in his heart. How could he not tell that Jian Luo was just being polite? If they really captured Duan Jiping, Jian Luo would immediately claim the credit himself. There was no way he would give God Bless anything. Brother God Bless, your army of God will have to help us search for clues next. We'll have to work together, Jian Luo said with a smile. God Bless nodded. There was a hint of helplessness in his eyes. Jian Luo had something on him, so he could only work for him for free. While God Bless and Jian Luo were discussing the search for Zhuowen and Duan Jiping, they didn't know that the targets they were searching for were rushing to the Nuwa realm without stopping. Whoosh! A stream of light flashed above the clouds, tens of thousands of miles away, stirring up waves of clouds. As the clouds dispersed, a gigantic divine ship could be seen hovering above the clouds. It connected with the sky and was heading south rapidly. On the deck of the divine ship, Zhuowen sat with his legs crossed. The Taiyu sacred sword was gently placed on his knees. His breathing was even and rhythmic. If one were to look closely, they would see a wisp of white gas coming out of his nose as he inhaled and exhaled. The white gas gushed out and turned into two white dragons. They were faintly letting out deafening dragon roars. Xiao He and the sword spirits of the blood celestial sword and the sacrificial death sword had left the Taiyu sacred sword a long time ago. They were hovering on the other side of the deck, watching Zhuowen exhaling and cultivating. Shan Lingyun, on the other hand, was sitting next to him. She rested her chin on her hands and said to Xiao He, "What's wrong with my disciple? He was fine 10 days ago, but ever since the divine ship flew above the clouds and watched the sunrise and sunset, he's been sitting on the deck every day. He hasn't moved at all." During this period of time, Zhuowen had always occupied the sacred sword of Pluto, causing Xiao He and his 2 subordinates to become extremely bored. As a result, they all left the sacred sword of Pluto and wandered around the deck aimlessly. Chapter 4188. Shan Lingyun sighed in boredom. She had a lazy personality and couldn't stand loneliness. After Zhuowen and Duan Jiping entered the divine ship, they went into secluded cultivation as if their lives depended on it. On the contrary, she became the most idle person. If it wasn't for Xiao He, a fellow who shared the same rotten tastes, chatting with her during this period of time, she would really be bored to death. Just as Shan Lingyun and Xiao He were chatting, their bodies suddenly trembled. They felt an extremely terrifying sword, intent surging towards them like a tidal wave. It was as if a huge wave was crashing down. In the blink of an eye, they felt as if they were a lone boat in a vast ocean. They could be knocked unconscious at any time. Zhuowen, this brat, comprehended something incredible. Xiao He opened her eyes and smacked her lips. She looked at the back of the figure sitting cross-legged at the bow of the ship. At this moment, Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. He was smiling. If one hears the truth in the morning, one can die in the evening without regrets. Zhuowen suddenly stood up. His sword intent was like a tornado that shot up into the sky. Watching from a wall for 10 days and 10 nights, watching the sunrise and sunset, the clouds flying and falling, he finally came to a realization. After knowing that his cultivation, array formation, and pill refinement wouldn't be able to improve in the short term, Zhuowen didn't work on these 3 areas. Instead, he looked back at the various mystiques that he had created and the primordial technique. After 10 days of great enlightenment, he had finally mastered all of his divine abilities through a comprehensive study. Furthermore, he had even gained a brand new understanding. Zhuowen's hands flitted about in the air, forming hand seals. He began to cast one divine ability after another that he had either created or comprehended in the past. The primordial soldier mantra, primordial movement technique, primordial heaven and earth, a line of sky, sword shaking the 9 heavens, and other mystiques poured out of the sea of clouds. Suddenly, the calm sea of clouds surged with monstrous waves. They surged into the sky and then fell back down. It was a magnificent scene of clouds rising and falling. Zhuowen flew out and stood above the sea of clouds. Suddenly, the sea of clouds exploded. It was as if a flower of clouds had bloomed in the middle of the sea of clouds. Afterwards, Zhuowen made a grabbing motion with his right hand. The Taiyu's saintly sword seemed to be pulled by an invisible rope, shooting towards Zhuowen. He grasped it in his hand. His right hand tightly gripped the sword hilt as Zhuowen's right arm slashed out like a thunderbolt. One slash followed by another, and the sea of clouds was stirred up by waves, one higher than the other. The sun rises in the east, seek the truth in the morning. Zhuowen suddenly faced the east and slashed out. The huge red sun in the endless sky in the east seemed to be pulled by this sword. It actually started to shake violently. Then, the energy of the red sun was drawn in by the terrifying sword intent. It condensed and turned into a blazing golden sun. The sun broke through the sea of clouds and soared into the eastern sky. It hung upside down in the endless sky as if it was competing with the red sun. What a shocking scene of 2 suns hanging together. The sun sets in the west, and one can die in the evening. Suddenly, Zhuowen's right hand fell limply to his side, and the sword fell slowly. The majestic life force seemed to have lost all its light at the moment the sword fell. It was like a hero with white hair and a beauty in her twilight years. It was filled with a strange feeling of decline. When the sword fell, The sea of clouds seemed to stop in time. It froze in space and did not move at all. As for the golden sun that had risen to the apex, it exploded and turned into countless frightening meteors that fell from the sky. The moment the meteors fell, the sea of clouds that seemed to have frozen suddenly collapsed. It fell from the sky, as if the sea was really leaking into the mortal world. At that moment, countless living beings within a radius of 1 trillion miles lifted their heads to look at the sea of clouds that had been hanging high in the sky for countless years. They were shocked to find that the sea of clouds that was high in the sky seemed to be pulled by some force on the ground at that moment. It was a sight that was hard to come by in 1,000 years. The sea of clouds' abnormality was simply too spectacular, and the area was too vast. God Bless and Jian Luo, who were far away in the magical realm, seemed to have sensed it too. They lifted their heads to look into the distance. The sun shattered, and the sea of clouds fell. What a powerful divine power. This is at least a technique that only a peak Qian Kuan calamity expert can do. God Bless's eyes flickered as he mumbled to himself. Someone's comprehending a divine power above the sea of clouds. This divine power is very, very powerful. I'm afraid it's comparable to the full-powered attack of an ordinary beginner Dharma law expert. Brother God Bless, come with me. I'd like to see who dares to do this. He's cultivating a divine power above the sea of clouds openly. Jian Luo squinted his eyes and called out to God Bless. The two of them turned into two streams of flowing light and plunged towards the sea of clouds far away. In the magical realm, they gave full authority to the Nuwa clan cultivator army that they had brought along this time. They could do whatever they wanted. Zhuowen kept his sword and returned to the deck. At that moment, Xiaohe and Shanling Yun were completely stunned by Zhuowen's move. Zhuowen raised his sword and brought it down. Its might was far too terrifying. It was actually able to create such a terrifying might. Duan Jipeng, who had been cultivating in seclusion in the cabin, was awakened by the huge commotion caused by Zhuowen. He hurried to the deck. Brother Zhua, is this the divine power that you've just comprehended? Duan Jipeng couldn't help but ask as he looked at the falling meteor and the boundless sea of clouds that was sinking rapidly. Yes. Zhuowen nodded as he wore a delighted smile on his face. After 10 days and 10 nights, he finally comprehended the divine power. It was a great reward for him. This divine power had merged all the martial Tao comprehension that he had gained since he started cultivating. It could be considered as his ultimate move. Does this divine power have a name? Duan Jipeng asked with interest. Zhuowen thought for a while and smiled. After observing the sea of clouds for 10 days and 10 nights, I comprehended the Tao in the morning and Dai in the evening. The name of this divine power shall be life in the morning and death in the evening. Great name. Duan Jipeng couldn't help but give him a thumbs up. Then, Duan Jipeng's face turned serious. He said, "The commotion caused by your divine power is too great. All the cultivators within a few 100 billion miles have sensed it. We can't stay here any longer." Zhuowen nodded with a solemn face too. Then, he steered the divine ship and flew towards the south rapidly. At the same time, Zhuowen set up a concealment array behind the divine ship, as well as some traps. It was enough to hide the traces of his divine ship, preventing other cultivators from following the traces to find the divine ship. Sure enough, not long after the divine ship left, figures rushed over from all directions. They rushed out of the falling sea of clouds, avoided the flaming meteors, and arrived above the sea of clouds. During this time, there were many weak fellows who were accidentally hit by the flaming meteors. They screamed miserably as their bodies and souls were destroyed. This caused many cultivators who heard the news to become serious. They didn't dare to be careless and tried their best to avoid the flaming meteors. When these cultivators arrived above the sea of clouds, they were disappointed to find that there was no trace of Zhuowen above the sea of clouds. Chapter 4189. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The two powerful streams of light arrived in the blink of an eye and appeared above the sea of clouds that was flowing against the current. At the same time, a terrifying aura spread around the entire sea of clouds like a wave. Many cultivators who had been attracted by the commotion in the sea of clouds changed their expressions drastically under this terrifying pressure. Their bodies stiffened and their faces turned deathly pale. Some of the cultivators whose cultivation base was not high enough spat out a mouthful of blood, even though they were far away from the aura. They kept retreating, distancing themselves from the two streams of light that had suddenly appeared. The streams of light faded, revealing two figures. One of them was a man who wore a feather robe that shone with dazzling starlight. Although his face was pale, it could not hide his handsomeness. The other man looked ordinary. He was tall and slender, and he carried a sword case that was as long as his body. He looked indifferent. The two of them were God Bless and Jian Luo, who were attracted by the abnormality in the sea of clouds. They're two great carefree realm powerhouses. The surrounding people looked fearful. They could not help but retreat a distance away as they looked at God Bless and Jian Luo with vigilance. What a powerful superpower! Jian Luo looked around and sensed the terrifying sword intent that had yet to dissipate completely in the sea of clouds. A gleam shot out of his indifferent eyes. Even he was amazed by the lingering sword intent. Does anyone know who the person who used the divine ability above the sea of clouds was? Jian Luo surveyed the surroundings as his calm voice resounded in everyone's hearts like a great bell. The people looked at each other and shook their heads. An old man with white sideburns walked out and bowed to Jian Luo and God Bless. He said respectfully, "My lords, we've just arrived, and we didn't find the person who performed the superpower here." The person who performed the superpower. The old man with white sideburns looked at Jian Luo and God Bless with even more respect. He was a knowledgeable person. Jian Luo and God Bless were very powerful, far more powerful than Universe Calamity. Moreover, Jian Luo and God Bless's appearances were very obvious. They had human heads and snake bodies. According to his knowledge, such a trait was unique to the Nuwa clan in the Outer Worlds. Regardless of whether it was the man with the sword case on his back or the man in the feathered robe, they should both be peerless experts of the Nuwa clan. He naturally didn't dare to offend or slight such experts. Does anyone here know the truth? Jian Luo didn't even look at the white-haired old man. Instead, he turned to the others and asked. The white-haired old man's expression darkened when he saw that Jian Luo was ignoring him. Although he was only an itinerant cultivator and his background was not as strong as Jian Luo and Shunyu, he was still a supreme powerhouse with a Qiankun Great Tribulation cultivation base. Among this group of cultivators, he was considered the strongest. He admitted that Jian Luo and God Bless were more powerful than him, but there should be a limit to how powerful they were. Everyone had already stepped into the great carefree realm, so they should at least be honest with each other. Everyone looked at each other and shook their heads. The first to reach the sea of clouds was the old man with white hair. If even the old man did not know, there was no need to mention them. God Bless sighed softly. His eyes were filled with pity when he looked at the cultivators who were shaking their heads. He had known Jian Luo for a long time, so he knew Jian Luo's temperament very well. Jian Luo appeared to be kind and amiable, but he was actually very bloodthirsty. He would attack with his sword if there was a disagreement, and he would kill if he was enraged. The history of Jian Luo's growth was made up of countless bones and rivers of blood. As the saying went, a general success was built on thousands of bones. It was the most appropriate way to describe Jian Luo's rise. After hearing everyone's answer, Jian Luo shook his head. His eyes were filled with pity. The white-haired old man noticed that Jian Luo's lips were curled up as he shook his head, revealing an enigmatic smile. Since you don't know, you're useless to me. As for me, I've always treated useless trash with killing, killing, killing. After Jian Luo finished speaking, his eyes were filled with terrifying killing intent. Everyone present felt the killing intent. They were horrified, and chills ran down their spines. Oh no, run. Finally, a cultivator on the scene reacted. He shouted and screamed, and then quickly fled into the distance. His words were like a fuse that lit up the fuse. Everyone fled in all directions. Rise! Jian Luo was expressionless. He formed a sword seal with his right hand, and the sword case on his back slowly opened. A blazing sword light shot out. This sword light shot into the sky and split into thousands of sword shadows in the blink of an eye. The sword shadows were like blooming lotuses shooting out in all directions. Wherever the sword shadows passed, no one could survive. Everyone was killed. The white-haired old man shouted and summoned his Qian Kun world to protect himself. Boom, boom, boom. However, he found out in disbelief that his Qian Kun world could not block these strange sword shadows at all. When the sword shadows landed on his Qian Kun world, they ignored the barrier of the Qian Kun world and immediately pierced through it. No, you're all cosmic manifestation experts? When the sword shadows pierced through the old man's body, his eyes widened as he looked at Jian Luo, who was hovering in the distance with a calm expression. Unfortunately, Jian Luo did not even look at him. Or rather, Jian Luo did not take him seriously at all. The old man laughed bitterly as his consciousness sank into darkness. Withdraw. Jian Luo withdrew the sword seal with his right hand, and the countless sword shadows that were wreaking havoc above the sea of clouds disappeared. They turned into a sword gleam and returned to the sword case. In the sea of clouds, apart from Jian Luo and God Bless, the rest of the cultivators died on the spot. God Bless clicked his tongue as he looked at Jian Luo with even more fear. In his eyes, Jian Luo was a fickle lunatic. Even though he was an old friend of Jian Luo's for many years, he could not figure out what Jian Luo was thinking at times. Brother Jian Luo, we can definitely follow the tracks that person left behind. God Bless suggested softly as he looked in the direction where Zhuowen's divine ship had gone. Jian Luo shook his head and sneered. There's a powerful array, divine master by his side. I've already scanned the area with my divine sense, and the traces have already been erased. Furthermore, there are many array formations and traps set up around the area. If we follow the trail, we'll only get into trouble. Speaking of which, this guy is really cunning. I'd really like to see what he's like. God Bless pursed his lips. He knew that if the guy who performed the divine power really saw Jian Luo, he would be in real trouble. Time passed gradually, and the divine ship was still heading south. Zhuowen sat with his legs crossed on the deck of the ship every day. After all, he had just created the divine power, so it was inevitable that there would be some loopholes and he was unfamiliar with it. Chapter 4190. After entering the Nuar realm, Duan Jiping came out of seclusion, and his expression became much more serious. After all, Duan Jiping was a wanted criminal of the Nuar clan. After entering the Nuar realm, he could no longer swagger in as he had before. After entering the Nuar realm, Zhuowen could clearly feel how strong and rich the chaotic energy in the Nuar realm was. It was far from what the lower realms like the Hushu realm and the Magus realm could compare with. What a rich, chaotic energy. The Nuar realm is indeed a high-level realm. The location of this realm is indeed a treasure trove. Zhuowen could not help but sigh with emotion. Duan Jiping sneered and said, "In the beginning, the chaotic energy in every place was uniform. But later, after the realms were established, there was no end to the wars. The strong preyed on the weak, and the big fishes ate the small fishes. The stronger realms exploited the weaker realms. The stronger the realms, the weaker the realms were. Take the Nuar realm, for example. It is a higher realm. Every year, he would receive offerings of chaos spirit veins from the surrounding lower and middle realms. These chaos spirit veins are used by the Nuar realm to improve the terrain of their realms, such as the dragon veins and blessed lands. Otherwise, how could the chaotic energy in the Nuar realm be so strong?" Zhuowen revealed a look of understanding. After thinking for a moment, he said, "Then, the higher-level super and invincible domains also use this method of the strong preying on the weak to strengthen their domains. Duan Jiping nodded and said, "All the outer realms follow the principle of the strong preying on the weak. It's just that the super and invincible realms only accept offerings from the higher level realms. Of course, when the higher realms offer enough chaos spirit veins to the super and invincible realms, they can sometimes get some benefits from it. And sometimes, the value of these benefits can be far greater than the chaos spirit veins they offer. Therefore, the higher realms offer chaos spirit veins, but they do it on their own initiative. The most miserable ones are the lower realms. Not only will they be exploited by the higher realms, even the middle realms will do their best to exploit them. This is also the main reason why a lower realm can never become a middle realm or a high realm. Unless there's a big shot in the lower realm who can really cover the sky with one hand, perhaps there's a chance for a salted fish to make a comeback." Zhuowen fell into deep thought. It seemed that no matter where one was, the law of the jungle was the most basic principle. He couldn't help but think of the Panga domain. He thought for a moment and asked Duan Jiping, "Brother Duan, do you know about the Panga domain?" "Panga domain? Are you talking about the Panga realm that no longer exists?" Duan Jiping asked in surprise. Zhuowen nodded and sighed slightly in his heart. Although he had seen the map of the 100 outer domains before, he had not seen the mark of the Panga domain. In fact, he had already guessed it. Now that he heard Duan Jiping mention it, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Zhuowen did not hide his relationship with the Panga clan and briefly told Duan Jiping about it. Duan Jiping looked at Zhuowen in surprise. He didn't expect that the latter had obtained the inheritance of the Panga clan when he was in the lower domain. No wonder he asked about the Panga domain. "What? You've offended the different ghost clan?" When Duan Jiping learned that Zhuowen had killed Bing Hui of the different ghost clan in the lower domain, he looked as if he had seen a ghost. "Is there a problem?" Zhuowen saw the horror on Duan Jiping's face, and his heart sank. He couldn't help but ask. Duan Jiping hesitated for a moment. He thought for a moment and began to sigh. "Brother Zhua, perhaps you still don't know the strength of the different ghost clan. Back then, the Panga clan was a famous and powerful clan in the 100 outer domains, and the Panga domain had reached the super level. Later, the talents of the Pangu clan withered, and each generation was worse than the last. Soon, it became the weakest domain in the super level. At that time, the different ghost clan was only a high-level domain. Even so, they had many talents, and the limelight overshadowed all the other high-level domains. Later, the different ghost clan joined forces with the Heartless clan and the Xuannong clan to attack the Panga clan. They defeated the Panga domain in one fell swoop. Back then, it was a great event that shocked the entire 100 domains. The elites of the Pangu clan were slaughtered, and the elderly, women, and children were captured as slaves by the otherworldly ghost clan, the Heartless clan, and the Xuannong clan, and the resources of the Panga domain that had accumulated for countless years were divided by the three major clans. The different ghost clan was even more ruthless. While dividing the Pangu clan, they plotted against the Heartless clan and the Xuannong clan, causing the two clans to suffer heavy losses. The heritage of the Pangu clan was swallowed by the different ghost clan. After swallowing the resources and territory of the Pangu clan, the different ghost clan went one step further. In just a few decades, they became a super-level domain. Later, they swallowed the Heartless clan and the Xuannong clan, causing the strength of the different ghost clan to grow again. Speaking of this, Duan Jiping sighed and said there are only 9 super-level domains in the 100 outer domains. Although the different ghost realm is a rising star, its progress is so fast that many super-level domains are dumbfounded. Now, the different ghost realm is in the super-level domain. Its strength is enough to rank second, only below the divine blaze domain. Zhuowen's pupils shrunk slightly. He naturally knew quite a bit about the distribution of ranks in the 100 outer regions. The super-level domain was only below the 5 invincible domains. It could be regarded as a real giant in the 100 outer domains. For the other ghost realm to be ranked second among the super realms, it was clear how strong their foundation and strength were. Brother Joie, if you want to revive the Panga clan, I'm afraid the hope is very slim. The different ghost clan is now at its peak. The three kings of the different ghost clan are famous peerless powerhouses in the 100 outer domains. In addition, the different ghost clan has many powerhouses and geniuses. Take Sakyamuni, who has just emerged as a new force, for example. When he was in the ancient star transformation, he was the first on the outer domain heavenly list. He suppressed the other geniuses on the outer domain heavenly list until they couldn't breathe. Moreover, this guy cultivated very fast. He didn't stay on the outer domain heavenly list for many years before he smoothly entered the great carefree realm. This guy may be in existence that has the potential to surpass the three kings of the different ghost clan in the future. There are even rumors that the three kings of the different ghost clan regard him as an eternal genius who can upgrade the different ghost realm to an invincible domain. It can be said that they value him very much. When Duan Jiping talked about Sakyamuni, a touch of amazement flashed in his eyes. He couldn't help but click his tongue in wonder. Zhuan's eyes slowly narrowed. Sakyamuni, I really didn't expect this guy to be so popular after entering the 100 outer domains. Chapter 4191. Zhuan did not mention the feud between him and Sakyamuni to Duan Jiping. He knew that what was to come would come. In the future, he and Sakyamuni would come to a crossroad on the road to becoming a powerful expert. At that time, it would be a battle to the death, and only one of them would survive. After entering the New realm, Zhuan and Duan Jiping both raised their vigilance. The New realm seemed to be peaceful, but they could feel that the security in the realm was not lax. Fortunately, Zhuan's attainments in the art of formations were so high that he not only successfully avoided the patrols at the border of the New realm, but also avoided the detection of the many surveillance formations at the border. Falling Horse City was a famous city at the western border of the New realm. It was also the core city of the area hundreds of billions of miles around the western border. Inside the city, people came and went. It was bustling with noise and excitement. At this moment, outside Falling Horse City, two men in shabby clothes walked into the city, holding the hand of a little girl about 10 years old. The three of them were dressed very simply. Although the little girl was only wearing clothes made of coarse cloth, her round face was as smooth and white as a porcelain doll. She was so cute that people could not help but want to pinch her cheeks. There were 30,000 cultivator soldiers stationed in Falling Horse City, and the city was heavily guarded. However, the three of them were dressed very simply, so they did not go through any cumbersome inspection before entering the city. Among the three, a younger man held the little girl's hand and said to the handsome man beside him with a smile, "Brother Duan, you are a frequent visitor of the New realm, aren't you? You don't know about the mountain of 7 emotions and 6 desires?" The handsome man was a little embarrassed. He coughed and said, "The New realm is vast, and there are countless famous mountains and rivers. Even the people of the New clan may not be familiar with the geography of the entire New realm, let alone me." The three of them were naturally Zhuan, Duan Jiping, and Shan Lingyun, who had been carefully disguised. Zhuan had read the map of the 100 domains and knew that the so-called mountain of 7 emotions and 6 desires was located in the New realm. However, the map that Zhuan had browsed through was not an accurate one, and the location of the mountain of 7 emotions and 6 desires in the New domain was a little vague. Therefore, Zhuan did not know what to do after entering the New domain. On the way to the New domain, he naturally asked Duan Jiping about the 7 emotions and 6 desires mountain. However, to his disappointment, Duan Jiping knew nothing about it. Therefore, after the three of them successfully entered the New realm, they planned to settle down in the largest city at the western border of the New realm, Falling Horse City, and ask around for information about the 7 emotions and 6 desires mountain. Duan Jiping was rather familiar with Fallen Horse City. He He brought Zhuowen and Shan Lingyun to the highest grade inn in the city. The chaotic energy in this inn was obviously much denser than outside. The moment Zhuowen stepped into the inn, he sensed that there was a high-level energy gathering divine formation in the inn. The energy gathering divine formation could greatly increase the efficiency of absorbing chaotic energy, allowing the cultivators in the formation to cultivate with half the effort. Dear guests, are you staying in the inn or hosting a banquet? The moment the three of them stepped into the inn, the quick-witted waiter came up to them. He did not mind that Zhuowen and the other two were dressed shabbily and greeted them warmly. Prepare 3 first-class rooms for us. This is the deposit. After we check out, you could deduct it from the deposit. Duan Jiping took out 10 top-grade chaos gems and casually tossed them to the waiter. The waiter took the chaos gems, and his eyes lit up. The smile on his face became more enthusiastic and sincere, and he quickly welcomed Zhuowen and the other two into the inn. Damn it, the Nuwa domain is really full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. I always thought that there was only one expert in the Nuwa domain who had surpassed the cosmic Dharma form. I didn't expect that some time ago there was another expert who was not weaker than the Grandmaster. When Zhuowen and the other two were about to follow the waiter upstairs, they passed by a square table. Zhuowen subconsciously stopped. The first floor of this inn was a tavern table, which was specially for cultivators to drink and chat. At Zhuowen's level of cultivation, he did not need to eat anymore. However, there were still many cultivators who liked to drink and eat while chatting. It was just to satisfy their cravings and, at the same time, to improve their relationship with their friends. Zhuowen and Duan Jiping exchanged a look and were immediately attracted by the conversation at the table. The Grandmaster was the strongest cultivator of the Nuwa clan. It was said that his cultivation had reached the 3rd level of the Great Carefree Realm, the realm of ancient starlight. At the same time, he was the only expert in the Nuwa domain who had reached the realm of ancient starlight. They did not expect that there would be another figure who was not weaker than the Grandmaster in the Nuwa domain. Didn't this mean that the Nuwa clan would become stronger? Zhuowen glanced at Duan Jiping, who was beside him, and saw that the latter's face was not very good. Duan Jiping waved his hand to the waiter, motioning him to leave first. Then, the three chose a table and sat down. 2 young cultivators were talking. From the clothes they wore and the aura they unintentionally leaked, it could be seen that these 2 young cultivators could be considered young geniuses with extraordinary family backgrounds. The one who spoke loudly just now was a young man in white. He was beaming with exultation as he spoke with fervor and assurance. He was in high spirits. Another expert who has reached the realm of ancient starlight? Is there another expert in the Nuwa clan who has successfully advanced? The young man in blue opposite the young man in white asked cooperatively. The young man in white smiled and said mysteriously, "Brother, you don't know this. This new expert who has reached the realm of ancient starlight is not from the Nuwa clan. It is said that she is an itinerant cultivator and a peerless beauty." A peerless beauty? A itinerant cultivator? How is this possible? The young man in blue frowned slightly, feeling a little incredulous. I also find it unbelievable. When I learned that this woman had obtained the inheritance of the Saint Lord of 7 emotions and 6 desires, I believed it. The young man in white whispered, "The Saint Lord of 7 emotions and 6 desires? Didn't they say that she had died many years ago? Her inheritance has always been firmly in the hands of the Nuwa clan. How could it be obtained by an itinerant cultivator? Doesn't that mean that the Nuwa clan has been in the realm of 7 emotions and 6 desires for countless years? Did the Saint Lord's efforts all go to waste?" The young man in blue was very surprised. That's right. No one knows how that peerless beauty entered the mountain of 7 emotions and 6 desires. Even the experts of the Nuwa clan who have been guarding the mountain of 7 emotions and 6 desires were confused when that peerless beauty completely accepted the inheritance and appeared in a high-profile manner. The Nuwa clan only realized it in hindsight. Chapter 4192. What's the result of the battle? The young man in blue couldn't wait to ask. The white-robed young man's face turned serious as he said in a low voice, "That beauty and the Grand Master are fighting fiercely. The entire Nuar realm can feel the terrifying waves of battle. It's enough to shock the world and make ghosts and gods weep." The final result was that the beauty seemed to be injured and fled, and the Grand Master even went into seclusion after the battle. Although the Nuwa clan has kept silent about this battle, many people have already guessed that the Grand Patriarch might have been severely injured as well. Hearing this, the young man in blue opened his mouth and fell into deep shock. The Grand Master, the strongest master of the Nuwa clan, had a high status and prestige in the eyes of the practitioners of the Nuwa realm. It was unexpected that the Grand Master, who was almost invincible in the eyes of the practitioners of the Nuwa realm, was also injured. Was that beauty really so powerful? At the next table, Zhuo, who was originally holding a cup in his right hand, was shocked when he heard that the peerless beauty and the great clan master were both injured. His right hand involuntarily exerted force and crushed the teacup in his hand, and his movement naturally attracted the attention of the two young men who were talking. Zhuo smiled kindly at the two young men and asked, "Brothers, I'm very interested in what you're talking about. For a long time, the Grand Master has been the strongest master of the Nuar realm, but I didn't expect that he couldn't deal with a woman who suddenly appeared. A rogue cultivator. I'm very curious about that female loose cultivator. I wonder if you two brothers can tell me the name of that female loose cultivator?" The young man in white and the young man in blue looked at each other and saw the vigilance and doubt in each other's eyes, but they didn't answer. For a moment, the two tables fell into a strange silence. "Waiter, 2 pots of chaotic divine nectar." In this strange silence, Duan Jiping was the first to break the deadlock. He clapped his hands and asked the waiter to bring the wine. "Okay, sir, please wait a moment." The waiter, who was standing not far away, answered with his eyes shining. He quickly went to get the wine, as if he was afraid that Duan Jiping would change his mind. The two youths at the next table sucked in a cold breath. They were all knowledgeable people. This chaos divine nectar was an extremely famous divine wine in this inn and even in the entire Nuar realm. The price of this wine was extremely high. A single jug cost 100 top-grade chaos gems. Even though the two young men were from wealthy families, they could not bear to buy this wine. On the other hand, the 3 people at the neighboring table that wore rather shabby clothes had actually ordered 2 jugs of chaotic divine nectar in one go. So how could the two young men not be shocked? Moreover, the reason the chaos divine nectar's price was so high was not only because of its top-grade taste and rich fragrance, but also because this wine was much more beneficial to one's cultivation than top-grade chaos crystals. This was because there was a certain chance of entering a state of epiphany after drinking this wine. Although the probability was very small, it was enough to be used as a gimmick to promote this wine. Soon, the waiter came back with an exquisite tray. On the tray, there were 2 beautiful and exquisite wine jugs. Duan Jiping took a jug of wine from the tray, then pointed at the 2 young men at the next table and signaled the waiter to bring the other jug over. The waiter was very tactful. He quickly nodded and bowed, then handed the other jug of chaotic divine nectar to the next table. "Brothers, I feel like old friends at first sight. This jug of chaotic divine nectar is for you. I hope you won't stand on ceremony," Duan Jiping said with a smile. The 2 young men hesitated for a moment, but in the end, they could not resist the temptation of the chaotic divine nectar. They cupped their hands at Zhuo and Duan Jiping and gladly accepted it. "I'm Su Lang, and this is my best friend, Lu Xin. May I know your names?" The white-clothed young man's tone became much warmer, and he said with a smile, "I'm Daowan, and he's Duan Lin. We brought our niece to the Nuar realm to seek refuge from a distant relative. We just happened to settle down in Fallen Horse City first." Zhuo returned the greeting. "Brother Daowan, I see that you pay a lot of attention to that female itinerant cultivator." The white-clothed young man, Su Lang, poured a cup of wine and proposed a toast to Zhuo with a smile. Zhuo drank up the cup, then clicked his tongue in wonder at the chaotic divine nectar and replied, "Haha, I've always been interested in such gossip, especially that Grand Master, who I admire the most. Now, there's a female itinerant cultivator who can compare with him. Of course, I'm very curious about her." The white-clothed young man did not suspect anything. He drank up the wine in his cup, then laughed heartily and said, "Actually, we really don't know the name of that female itinerant cultivator, but she always carries a zither with her, and by plucking the strings casually, she can affect her cultivation, her emotions and desires. She has a famous nickname in the Nuar realm, Lustless Zither Demon." A blazing cold light flashed in the depths of Zhuan's eyes. Suppressing the killing intent in his heart, he lowered his head and asked the white-clothed young man, "Brother Su, have you ever seen the appearance of that lustless zither demon?" Su Lang forced a smile and said, "I don't know." At that time, only those at the Great Carefree Realm could watch that great battle from a close distance. If I went close, wouldn't I be courting death? Moreover, most of the information I obtained was from hearsay, and it wasn't true. Brother Daowin, you don't have to take it seriously. The killing intent in Zhuan's eyes slowly faded away. He took a deep breath and continued asking, "Then, Brother Su, do you know where that lustless zither demon is gone?" Su Lang shook his head again and said, "I don't know. But that lustless zither demon should still be in the Nuar realm." Before the Grand Master went into seclusion, he had already sealed the aura of that lustless zither demon in the Nuar realm. Once that lustless zither demon leaves the Nuar realm, she will immediately be discovered by the experts of the Nuar clan. At that time, that lustless zither demon will face the encirclement of numerous experts of the Nuar clan. Even the Grand Master will come out of seclusion again. Now, there's no news at all. Obviously, that lustless zither demon is still hiding in the Nuar realm. A thoughtful look appeared in Zhuan's eyes, but he didn't continue asking. Instead, he casually chatted with the two young men at the table next to him. After chatting for a while, he had a good understanding of some of the major events that had happened in the Nuar realm recently. Of course, he naturally learned the specific location of the Mountain of Seven Emotions and Six Desires from the two young men in a roundabout way. After drinking a pot of chaotic divine nectar, the two young men stood up with rosy faces. They bowed to Zhuan and the other two, and then left the inn. Zhuan, on the other hand, sat silently on the table, absent-minded, and didn't say a word. Duan Jiping didn't disturb Zhuan, but Shan Lingyun's beautiful eyes were filled with worry. Chapter 4193. Disciple, are you all right? After a long silence, Shan Lingyun was the first to break the silence. "I'm fine." Zhuan smiled and shook his head, indicating that he was fine. "Brother Zhua, are you still going to the Seven Emotions, Six Desires Mountain?" Duan Jiping suddenly asked. Duan Jiping had heard about Moyan Wushang from Zhuan. When the two young men were talking about the desireless zither demon, he had already guessed the true identity of the desireless zither demon. Obviously, the person Zhuan was looking for was no longer in the Seven Emotions, Six Desires Mountain. In addition, the mountain was heavily guarded by the Nuwa clan. If he went to the Seven Emotions, Six Desires Mountain now, there was a high chance that he would return empty-handed. "Go," Zhuan said with determination. "Why?" Shan Lingyun and Duan Jiping asked at the same time. "Because Wushang knows that after I come to the 100 Territories, I will definitely come to the Seven Emotions, Six Desires Mountain to look for her. She might not be in the Seven Emotions, Six Desires Mountain, but she must have left some clues for me. If I want to find her, I have to go to the Seven Emotions, Six Desires Mountain." Zhuan took a deep breath and said, "It's too dangerous now. Are you going to barge in?" Duan Jiping frowned. "Of course not. Brother Duan, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. Moreover, I have the keepsake of the Seven Emotions, Six Desires, Saint Lord. As long as I can get close to the Seven Emotions, Six Desires Mountain, I will be able to enter the place of inheritance of the Seven Emotions, Six Desires, Saint Lord," Zhuan said confidently. The keepsake that he was talking about was the Seven Emotions tablet that Moyan Wushang had left for him. Moyan Wushang had obtained the Seven Emotions tablet and Six Desires ring from the Seven Emotions, Six Desires Saint Lord. She had left the Seven Emotions tablet to Zhuoan because she wanted to reunite with him in the future. Duan Jiping and Shan Lingyun looked at each other and didn't say anything. They knew Zhuoan's character well. They knew that he had reason and evidence. If he wasn't confident, he wouldn't act rashly. The three of them stayed in an inn in Falling Horse City for more than half a month. During the past half a month, Zhuoan had spent a considerable amount of chaos crystals to find out the whereabouts of desireless Zither Demon and the movements of Nuwa clan in Mount Seven Emotions and Six Desires. The Mountain of Seven Emotions and Six Desires was located in the Black Gold Mountain Range in the northwest of the Nuwa realm. The Black Gold Mountain Range was the #1 mountain range of the Nuwa clan, and there were many terrifyingly dangerous places within it. It was said that the Mountain of Seven Emotions and Six Desires was originally just an ordinary hill. Later on, it was occupied by the famous Great Devil, the Saint Lord of Seven Emotions and Six Desires, who then turned it into a devil's den. Most of the cultivators who stepped into the vicinity of the Seven Emotions and Six Desires mountain would not have a good ending. They would either turn into dried corpses or be lucky enough to survive and be stripped of their Seven Emotions and Six Desires, becoming the living dead. Later on, the Saint Lord of Seven Emotions and Six Desires went berserk while practicing a secret technique and was severely injured by the technique's backlash. When the news spread, many experts in the Nuwa realm were eager to take advantage of the Saint Lord of Seven Emotions and Six Desires. Unfortunately, the Saint Lord of Seven Emotions and Six Desires had slaughtered all the experts who harbored evil intentions. Many forces in the Nuwa realm were so terrified that they didn't dare to approach the Seven Emotions and Six Desires mountain, let alone harbor evil intentions. When a matter was thought to be over, the Grand Master of the Nuwa clan suddenly attacked the Saint Lord of Seven Emotions and Six Desires. In the end, the Saint Lord of Seven Emotions and Six Desires died with hatred. However, the Saint Lord of Seven Emotions and Six Desires was not only cruel to others, but also to himself. Before he died, he turned his cultivation base and flesh into a seven-colored demonic flame, which lingered in the Mountain of Seven Emotions and Six Desires. The seven-colored demonic flame was the essence of the Saint Lord of Seven Emotions and Six Desires. It was said that even an ancient star-light expert like the Grand Master could not completely break through the seven-colored demonic flame. Of course, even if the Grand Master could break through the seven-colored demonic flame, he would not be able to enter the Seven Emotions. The Mountain of Six Desires. This was because the Saint Lord of Seven Emotions and Six Desires had cursed the Grand Master before he died. If the Grand Master took even half a step into the Mountain of Seven Emotions and Six Desires, the Mountain of Seven Emotions and Six Desires would explode and the inheritance within would disappear completely. Not to mention whether this curse was real or not, the Great Clan Master naturally would not really take the risk. If this curse was really real, then he would really suffer a double loss, and the gains would not make up for the losses. Therefore, over the years, the Grand Master had sent a large number of troops to guard the Mountain of Seven Emotions and Six Desires. At the same time, he had tried countless methods to break through the seven demonic flames. Later on, the Nuwa clan did indeed find a way to do so. They discovered that the seven demonic flames were not burning the body or the soul, but the emotions and desires. As long as one lived in the Great Thousand Worlds, one could not avoid the emotions and desires of the Seven Emotions and Six Desires. Even after one became a saint ancestor, one could not be completely without desires. Therefore, the Nuwa clan began to experiment with stripping the cultivators of the Seven Emotions and Six Desires, and then threw them into the demonic flames. To their surprise, the cultivators who had been stripped of their emotions and Six Desires were not burned at all after being thrown into the demonic flames. They were safe and sound. However, the cultivators who had been stripped of their emotions and 6 desires basically died on the spot. In order to obtain the inheritance of the Saint Lord of 7 emotions and 6 desires in the Mountain of 7 emotions and 6 desires, the Nuwa clan began an inhumane human experiment. This experiment was quickly opposed by all the forces and cultivators in the Nuwa realm. As the opposition was too great, the Nuwa clan was forced to stop this inhumane experiment in order to not arouse public anger. However, the Grand Sovereign didn't give up. He turned his attention to the creatures of the lower realms and sent many cultivators of the Nuwa clan to the lower realms to pass down the method of human experimentation. He hoped that a successful test subject would appear. When the time came, they would be brought back to the Nuwa realm. Moyan Wushang was undoubtedly the sacrifice of this experiment, and also the most successful one. This was why the Nuwa clan had sent a direct descendant to take Moyan Wushang away, but Zhuowen had ruined it. What the Nuwa clan did not expect was that the Saint Lord of 7 emotions and 6 desires had already left his inheritance to Moyan Wushang, the most successful experiment of the Nuwa clan. Of course, all of this was just Zhuowen's guess, but he was sure that his guess was not far from the truth. At the same time, Zhuowen also heard that the defense of the Mountain of 7 emotions and 6 desires had become much more lax due to the appearance of the soulless Sither demon. Most of the Nuwa clan's forces in the Mountain of 7 emotions and 6 desires had been transferred to various parts of the Nuwa realm to search for the whereabouts of the soulless Sither demon. Of course, even so, the Black Gold Mountain range where the Mountain of 7 emotions and 6 desires was located was still a forbidden place for non-Nuwa cultivators. Ordinary cultivators were not qualified to approach the Black Gold Mountain range at all. However, he had heard that the great hunt in the Black Gold Mountain range was about to begin. The Black Gold Mountain range was the most vast and dangerous place in the Nuwa realm. There were many treasures and treasures in it. Chapter 4194. It was said that in the Great Hunt, cultivators who performed outstandingly would be rewarded handsomely. Of course, the reason why the Great Hunt could become a tradition of many forces in the Nuwa realm was that these forces wanted to measure the strength of other forces. Therefore, the tradition was passed down from generation to generation. In the previous Great Hunts, although the Nuwa clan had sent a large number of troops to guard the Mountain of 7 emotions and 6 desires, they did not forbid the Great Hunt. After all, it was a grand event that involved most of the forces. If the Nuwa clan did forbid the Great Hunt, it would cause public anger, which would be a great blow to the Nuwa clan's reputation. And the Great Hunt was the only way for most cultivators to enter the Golden Crow Mountain range. After gathering enough information, Zhuowen and the other 2 left Falling Horse City. The Great Hunt in the Golden Crow Mountain range was 2 months away, and Falling Horse City was more than a month away from the Golden Crow Mountain range. They planned to get to the cities near the Golden Crow Mountain range first, and then find a chance to get a place in the Great Hunt. There were 7 huge cities in the Golden Crow Mountain range, and the strength of each city was complicated. At full speed, Zhuowen and the other 2 finally arrived at Diluwa City, one of the 7 cities in the Golden Crow Mountain range, after 1.5 months. Diluwa City was much larger than Falling Horse City. Just the huge city gate standing in front of it was more than 10 times the size of Falling Horse City, and the difference in size was even greater. Although Falling Horse City was the largest city in the western border, it was only at the western border. Compared to Diluwa City, which was located in the central region of the Nuwa realm, it was still small in comparison to Diluwa City. Diluwa City was extremely large, much larger than any city Zhuowen had seen in the divine Magus realm and Hushu realm. When he learned that Diluwa City was not the most magnificent city in the Nuwa realm, he finally realized the huge gap between a higher realm and a lower realm. Because the Great Hunt was about to begin, the entry requirements of the 7 huge cities in the Golden Crow Mountain range were much lower than usual. Therefore, Zhuowen and the other 2 did not have to go through too many strict checks when they entered Diluwa City. To Zhuowen's surprise, The space in Diluwa City could be said to be vast, as if there was no end in sight. However, after entering the city, all he could see was a bustling crowd of people coming and going. The main street that ran from the top to the bottom of the city was filled with people, and he could not see the signboards of the shops on both sides of the street. Looks like this great hunt is not simple. It could actually attract so many forces and cultivators. Zhuowen looked around and said, Diluwa City by the Great Hunt. The Great Hunting has a long history. It is a tradition established by the masters of many forces in the Nuwa realm. Even the Nuwa clan agrees with this custom. When Duan Jiping mentioned the Great Hunt, there was a trace of nostalgia in the depths of his eyes. Back then, when he was still in the Nuwa realm, he had also participated in the Great Hunt. Now that he thought about it, time really flew by. Suddenly, Duan Jiping noticed that Zhuo Wan, who was walking side by side with him, had stopped, and his brows were slightly knit together. By he is also in Diluwa City, Zhuowen said seriously. Duan Jiping was surprised. He did not expect that Su Zhou would come to the Nuwa realm, and he happened to be in Diluwa City, which was near the Black Gold Mountain Range. It was too much of coincidence. What did he say to you? Duan Jiping asked with a frown. He didn't say anything. He just asked me to go to the Immortal Pavilion to find him. He said he had something to discuss with me. Zhuowen said in a deep voice. Duan Jiping and Shan Lingyun looked at each other and immediately thought of the black gold paper that Zhuowen had mentioned. Back then, Su Zhou was willing to cooperate with Zhua when peacefully, mainly because of the black gold paper. Now that Su Zhou had appeared in Diluo City of Nuwa realm, could it be related to the black gold paper as well? Let's go to the Immortal Pavilion first. I want to see what Su Zhou is up to. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. Although he had many doubts in his heart, he did not dwell on it. He led Duan Jiping and Shan Lingyun to ask about the exact location of the Immortal Ascension Pavilion. Then, they headed straight for the Immortal Ascension Pavilion. The Immortal Pavilion was located in the center of Diluwa City, where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold. It was the most famous brothel in Diluwa City. When Zhuowen and the others arrived at the entrance of the Immortal Ascension Pavilion, they discovered that the Immortal Ascension Pavilion was different from ordinary brothels. There were no prostitutes or middle-aged brothels trying to attract customers outside the door. At the entrance of the Immortal Ascension Pavilion, there was only a stone tablet that glowed with a brilliant light. On the stone tablet, the two words Immortal Ascension were written in flamboyant calligraphy. Clouds and mist lingered around the stone tablet, and the immortal chi was abundant. It was as if one had entered the door and become an immortal. In the Immortal Pavilion, the courtyard was deep, and there were pavilions. It had a style of Jiangnan. When Zhuowen and the other two stepped into the Immortal Pavilion, they followed the main path and entered the depths of the pavilion. They saw the main building in the depths of the Immortal Pavilion. The main building stood in the depths of the pavilion like a castle. Bright red lanterns were hung beside the main building in picturesque disorder. The melodious and elegant sound of a zither came faintly from the depths of the main building. It made one feel relaxed and calm. Are the three distinguished guests friends of Su Zhou? When Zhuowen and the other two walked to a white jade pavilion below the main building, a graceful beauty in a green robe walked over leisurely, holding a silk satin umbrella. She bowed to the three of them. Zhuowen nodded and muttered in the end, Su Zhou really knows how to enjoy himself. The green-robed woman naturally heard Zhuowen's muttering. She covered her mouth and laughed. Distinguished guests, please follow me. Su Zhou has been waiting for a long time in the Withering Flowers house. Zhuowen responded expressionlessly and silently followed behind the green-robed woman. Although the green-robed woman's cultivation wasn't high, her ability to observe people's expressions had reached the point of perfection. She saw the vigilance in Zhuowen's eyes at a glance. While leading the way, she chatted casually with him and revealed that the Immortal Pavilion's background was extraordinary. Even the disciples of the Nuwa clan wouldn't casually cause trouble when they entered the immortal pavilion. Zhuowen naturally saw the green-robed woman's good intentions. He smiled warmly at her, but his serious vigilance didn't dissipate. The green-robed woman might not know Su Zhou's background, but he had a vague guess. He knew that Su Zhou should be a disciple of an aristocratic family from a super realm. It was even possible that his forces in that super realm weren't weak. Even if the immortal pavilion had an extraordinary background and didn't fear the disciples of the Nuwa clan, could it not be that they didn't fear the disciples of an aristocratic family from a super realm? When the green-robed woman saw that Zhuowen was indifferent to her good intentions, she didn't waste any more effort and started to focus on leading the way. Chapter 4195. The immortal pavilion had a deep courtyard, pavilions, terraces, and pagodas. It was very complicated. Along the way, large red lanterns were hung on both sides of the corridor. The demonic red light scattered on the ground, giving off a decadent feeling. After an incense stick of time, the green-robed woman led Zhuowen and the other two to a pavilion with a plaque on the door that said, "Immortals do not return." The sound of guqin came from inside the pavilion. It was like high mountains and flowing water. It naturally calmed the restlessness in one's heart. "Gongzi, the person you want to invite is here." The green-robed woman bowed to a figure sitting cross-legged inside the pavilion and spoke softly. "I know. You can leave first." The sound of guqin didn't stop. The figure nodded. His voice was hoarse and magnetic. The green-robed woman clenched her teeth and left the pavilion with resentment in her eyes. "Brother Zhua, Brother Duan, why are you still standing outside? You're not outsiders. Come in." The hoarse voice that intoxicated many women sounded again. The tightly shut door under the plaque "No Return for Immortals" quietly opened to both sides. Zhuowen didn't suspect anything and calmly stepped through the door. The pavilion had a universe and an antique atmosphere. The four treasures of the study were all here. It could be seen that the owner of this pavilion was very refined. There was a sandalwood table in the hall. Two tall youths were sitting at the table. One of them had purple hair and purple eyes. He had an imposing appearance and was lively. It was Ziyu, whom Yi Qingyu had met at the tomb. Opposite Ziyu was a youth wearing a silver mask. The identity of the youth, sitting quietly like Mount Tai, was obvious. It was Su Zhou. Ziyu's purple eyes silently sized up Zhuowen. She curled her lips and didn't take the initiative to greet him. It was Su Zhou who laughed and stood up. He walked forward rather enthusiastically. "Brother Zhua, Brother Duan, long time no see." Su Zhou smiled and led Zhuowen and the other two into the room. He had them sit on both sides of the square table. There was an exquisite tea set on the table. A refreshing fragrance floated from the purple clay teapot. When the three of them took their seats, the beautiful maidservant that had been standing by the side since long ago respectfully poured tea for Zhuowen and the others. Inside the private room, the curtains were hanging down, and the faint green lamp reflected the slender and graceful figure of a woman. The hazy shadow of the woman gently strummed the guqin in front of her with both hands. The faint sound of the guqin was like flowing water, silently spreading throughout the entire tower of no return. Zhuowen gently took a sip of the fresh and fragrant tea. Then he looked at Su Zhou and Ziyu in front of him without speaking. He knew that since Su Zhou had called him over, there was naturally something important to discuss with him. Even though he was rather puzzled about why Su Zhou had come to the vicinity of Gold Crow Mountain Range, he was very smart and didn't ask because Su Zhou would naturally tell him. After coming back to his senses, Zhuowen was stunned to find that the little lowly sitting beside him was staring at the purple-haired, purple-eyed youth across from him without blinking. As if noticing Zhuowen's attention, the purple-haired, purple-eyed youth pursed his lips and coughed dryly. He glared fiercely at the little lowly and then sat up straight with a calm expression. Su Zhou ignored the purple-haired, purple-eyed youth's little actions and said with a light smile, "Brother Zhua, thank you for giving me face and personally coming to the immortal pavilion." Zhuowen put on a fake smile and said, "Since Brother Suzhou personally invited me, I naturally wouldn't dare to neglect. I just don't know what Brother Suzhou's important matter is." Suzhou's expression became serious. He said in a low voice, "Since Brother Zhua has come to the 7 cities of Gold Crow Mountain Range, you must be here for the big hunt, right? Then, Brother Zhua, do you know that there might be another piece of black gold paper in the Gold Crow Mountain Range?" Suzhou asked in a low voice. Zhua Wen's heart shook. He naturally knew what the black gold piece of paper was. This was because he had just obtained this piece of black gold paper from the tomb of a powerhouse. It was a fragment of a map from a ruin. He didn't expect that there would be another piece of black gold paper hidden in the Gold Crow Mountain Range. "Are you sure?" Zhuowen asked. Suzhou paused for a moment and said hesitantly, "I'm not sure either. There's a great speech spirit master in my family who recently used the speed of speech to deduce the approximate location of the other piece of black gold paper. It's in the Gold Crow Mountain Range of the Niwa domain. That great speech spirit master in my family has a high position and great power. His speech spirit technique is at the peak of perfection. I think the location he deduced shouldn't be wrong. So, Brother Suzhou, are you here to cooperate with me?" Zhuowen said with a slight smile. Suzhou smiled embarrassedly and said, "Brother Zhua, you're really smart. You already have a piece of black gold paper with you. According to what I know, this piece of black gold paper is forged from an extremely rare divine stone. It's connected like a broken lotus root. I think that, Brother Zhua, if you enter the Gold Crow Mountain Range, it might be easier for you to find that piece of black gold paper." Zhuowen frowned slightly. He looked deeply at Suzhou and said with a faint smile, "Brother Suzhou, according to you, I have to find that piece of black gold paper for you?" Suzhou was as calm as water and said, "Brother Zhua, I'll tell you the truth. This piece of black gold paper is the map to the ruin, and it's also the key to enter the ruin. Every piece of black gold paper can bring a certain number of cultivators into the ruin. For Brother Zhua, one piece of black gold paper is actually more than enough. I think you know better than I do that a man's wealth is his own ruin." Zhuan's eyes slowly narrowed, and his expression gradually turned cold. He said, "Brother Suzhou, are you threatening me?" "It's not a threat. I'm just telling you the truth, Brother Zhua. Of course, if Brother Zhua is really willing to help me, and you can really find that piece of black gold paper for me, I'll definitely give Brother Zhua a satisfactory reward." Suzhou said calmly. "Brother Suzhou, why don't you tell me? What kind of reward can you give me?" Zhuowen said jokingly, "If Brother Zhua can successfully help me get that piece of black gold paper, I, Suzhou, can swear to the heavens that I'll help you break through to the great carefree realm and also help Brother Duan advance to the mid-Dharma plane in a short period of time. This is a deal where both sides get what they need. I think Brother Zhua has no reason to reject it," Suzhou said calmly. Zhuowen and Duan Jiping looked at each other, and they could see the surprise in each other's eyes. They did not doubt Suzhou's promise at all, because Suzhou's family background was there for all to see. Although they did not know which power Suzhou came from, it was definitely a powerful force in the Supreme Domain. In the Supreme Domain, there were as many experts as there were clouds, and as many forces as there were rain. These forces had a deep foundation, and it would not be too much of a problem for Zhuowen to break through to the Qianquan realm in a short period of time. Suzhou noticed the joy in Zhuowen and Duan Jiping's eyes, and the corners of his mouth under the mask curled up slightly. He knew that Zhuowen and Duan Jiping were already tempted. Chapter 4197. Milady, do you think that Zhuowen is a person without Tao roots? But everyone knows that those without Tao roots are mortals. It's impossible for them to embark on the true path of cultivation. Ziyu's purple eyes flickered as she blurted out, "Those without Tao roots are a taboo of the heavenly Tao. They have natural shackles. Although I have never seen those without Tao roots embark on the true path of cultivation, I have seen ancient records in ancient books. Those without Tao roots may be able to break the taboo, but the chances are very small. It's about 1 in a billion. Once the taboo is broken, Those without Tao roots will be like carps leaping through the dragon's gate. Their strength will undergo an earth-shattering change. The clear and melodious female voice sounded behind the curtain again. It was like a flowing stream, clear and tranquil. Ziyu originally wanted to ask again, but she was stopped by Su Zhou. Su Zhou respectfully cupped his hands towards the curtain and said in a low voice, "Milady, if we can obtain that black gold paper this time, then that matter you mentioned." The female voice behind the curtain paused for a moment. Then she said indifferently, "Don't worry. If you perform well, this seat may give you a chance to enter the outer court." Su Zhou and Ziyu were wild with joy. Although the outer court was the lowest place in the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy, it was the place they desired the most. Because from now on, their identities would be different. They would be students of the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy. And this you've called Zhuowen. I'm very interested in him. If necessary, I don't want him to die in the Wujin Mountains. All right. If there's nothing else, you may leave. The female voice behind the curtain once again ordered them to leave. Su Zhou and Ziyu looked at each other. Seeing that the female cultivator valued Zhuowen so much, they couldn't help but feel envious. They excused themselves and left the pavilion of no return. Time passed quickly. 3 days passed in a flash. The big hunt was getting closer and closer. Diluo City became more and more lively. Groups of forces from all over the Nuar realm arrived at the 7 giant cities near the Wujin Mountains. Although many cultivators had been diverted from the other 6 cities, Diluo City was still terrifyingly overcrowded. Su Zhou found Zhuowen again and gave Zhuowen 2 spots. Outside an inconspicuous inn in the northeast corner of Diluo City, Zhuowen watched as Su Zhou's figure merged into the crowd on the street. He then lowered his head to look at the 2 brocade talismans in his hand as Su Zhou's words involuntarily echoed in his mind. These 2 brocade talismans are the entry talismans for the Divine Jade Ancient Pavilion. I asked someone to get them from the Divine Jade Ancient Pavilion. Take the talisman and meet up with the team from the Divine Jade Pavilion. Before entering the Black Gold Mountain Range, try not to be too conspicuous. Once you enter the Golden Crow Mountain Range, you will be free to move about. You don't have to worry about the Divine Jade Ancient Pavilion. Zhuowen put away the talisman and smiled. He had heard of the ancient Divine Jade Pavilion before. Among the many forces in the Nuar realm, it could only be considered a mid-tier force. It was a bit awkward. The Divine Jade Pavilion was not a large faction to begin with, so they did not have many slots. Now that Su Zhou had taken 2 of their slots, they probably did not have many slots left. After getting the 2 slots, Zhuowen brought Shan Lingyun to the inn where the team from the Divine Jade Ancient Pavilion was staying. Duan Jipeng stayed in the inn. His cultivation level was too high, so he was not qualified to enter the Golden Crow Mountain Range. Therefore, he did not participate in the Grey Hunt. Instead, he stayed in the inn and cultivated in seclusion. Outside the Green God Inn, Zhuowen held Shan Lingyun's small hand and looked up at the entrance of the inn, which was bustling with people. The Green God Inn was above average in the Diluo City. The price was not high, but it was definitely not low either. There were many buildings in the 7 cities near the Golden Crow Mountain Range, but most of them were inns. The main reason was that the Golden Crow Mountain Range was too famous in the Nuar realm. Before the Nuar clans sealed off the area, there was no lack of cultivators who came to the Golden Crow Mountain Range to train or search for treasures. It was because of this reason that the rent of the land deeds in the 7 cities, including the Diluo City, was extremely high. The rent of the inns here had always been high. After the Nuar clan sealed off the Golden Crow Mountain Range, the flow of people in the 7 cities dropped sharply, and the rent fell to the bottom. And this time, when the Great Hunt was restarted, it gave the 7 cities, which were originally stagnant, a new lease of life. Zhuowen entered the Green God Inn. The inn was bustling with people. The 2 young waiters were so busy that they did not notice that there was a new guest in the inn. Zhuowen did not care about this. He walked straight to the counter not far from the entrance. Behind the counter, there was a row of wine cabinets. In the cabinets, there were many bottles of different styles of wine floating. Between the counter and the wine cabinets, There was a middle-aged woman with a plump figure. The beautiful woman also saw Zhuowen. She glanced at the little lowly beside Zhuowen and said with a smile, "The two of you, are you here to stay?" Zhuowen shook his head. He took out a jade slip that Su Zhou gave him and handed it to the woman. He said, "We were asked by someone to come and find the owner of the Divine Jade Pavilion, UG. This is the letter of entrustment. I hope you can help me pass it on." The woman took the jade slip. The smile on her face faded a lot. She just nodded and ignored Zhuowen. She just continued to wipe the wine cup in her hand. Zhuowen frowned. Looking at the woman's indifferent expression, Zhuowen naturally doubted whether this woman would really help him pass the letter of entrustment to UG. He withdrew a top-grade chaos crystal and placed it at the side of the counter. He said indifferently, "I'll have to trouble you, lady boss." The woman's eyes lit up. She silently put away the top-grade chaos crystal and smiled at Zhuowen. Then she said with a smile, "It's nothing. Young master, please sit on the first floor for a while. I'll help you pass on this letter of entrustment." As she spoke, the woman swayed her slender waist and walked towards the stairs of the inn. On the other hand, Zhuowen brought Shan Lingyun to a secluded table on the first floor and sat down quietly to wait. "What a snob," Shan Lingyun muttered angrily. Zhuowen smiled and said, "I won't accept a reward if it's not deserved. I'm not related to this lady boss, and we don't have any relationship. It's reasonable that she didn't help me pass on the letter of entrustment." Shan Lingyun naturally understood this as well. She was just angry. The two of them chatted while looking at the stream of people and carriages outside the inn. It wasn't long before the beautiful woman came down from the inn. When the beautiful woman arrived at the table where Zhuowen sat, Zhuowen slowly turned around. He glanced at the beautiful woman, and then his gaze descended onto the two beautiful figures behind the beautiful woman. There were two women behind the beautiful woman. One was older and one was younger. The older one was around 30 years old. She wore a moon-white robe and had a sword in a dark blue sheath at her waist. The other girl looked to be around 18 years old. She wore a long blue robe and had a head of long blue hair. Even her eyes had a blue tint to them. Chapter 4198. "Young master, I've brought him to you." The beautiful woman smiled politely. Zhuowen nodded and said, "Give me 2 pots of chaos divine nectar. Put it on my tab." Hearing this, the beautiful woman was pleasantly surprised. She hurriedly agreed and hurriedly went to get the chaos divine nectar. The white-robed woman's expression was calm. On the other hand, the blue-robed girl beside the white-robed woman curiously sized up Zhuowen. She had naturally heard of the chaos divine nectar. It could be considered the most expensive wine in the Nuar realm. She had once been very greedy for this wine, but she had no choice but to give up because she was shy. She did not expect that this inconspicuous young man in front of her would actually take out 2 pots of chaos divine nectar. Moreover, this was the first time they had met. "I presume you are the pavilion master of the divine Jade Ancient Pavilion, Jade Skin. Please take a seat." Zhuowen looked at the white-robed woman with an indifferent expression and pointed to the seat opposite him with a faint smile. The white-robed woman nodded and pulled the blue-robed girl to sit opposite Zhuowen. Zhuowen noticed that the white-robed woman's exposed skin was snow-white and delicate, as if it was flawless white porcelain. Although a female cultivator's appearance and skin would be greatly improved after their cultivation reached a certain level, there would still be some slight flaws. However, this divine jade ancient pavilion master skin could be said to be perfect and almost flawless. Moreover, Zhuowen could clearly feel that this jade skin's cultivation was extraordinary. He should be an expert around the middle stage of a universe tribulation. This made Zhuowen sigh. In the lower realms like the Hushu realm and the Purple Illusion realm, a cultivator at the middle stage of the universe tribulation was at least at the level of the realm lord. However, in the Nuar realm, he was only the master of a medium-sized force, the kind that was very inconspicuous. It seemed that the difference between a lower realm and a higher realm was far greater than he had imagined. "You are Zhuowen and Shan Lingyun?" The white-robed woman's red lips parted slightly, her voice ethereal and cold. Zhuan nodded his head, after which the white-robed woman spoke again. Your cultivation base isn't bad, but the one beside you is a little. The great hunt is extremely dangerous. Are you sure you want to bring her along? Shan Lingyun pursed her lips and said, My disciple will protect me. It's none of your business. The blue-robed young woman glared at her and said angrily, What an uneducated little girl. My master is just concerned about you. You're really treating her good intentions as ill intent. Just as the blue-robed girl wanted to say something, Yuji patted her shoulder. Only then did the blue-robed girl shut her mouth. However, she still glared at Shan Lingyun fiercely. Jade-skinned Pavilion Master, don't worry. I know my master's ability very well. I will protect her safety. Or is it that the Pavilion Master is unwilling to give your 2 quotas to us? If that's the case, I won't force you. When the time comes, I'll talk to Brother Suzhou and return the 2 quotas to you. Zhuan spoke slowly. His observation skills were extremely sharp. Naturally, he could see the trace of reluctance in Yuji's eyes. Yuji frowned slightly and shook her head. Since we've given out the quotas, there's no reason for us to take them back. If you think you can protect her well, then pretend that I didn't say anything just now. Suzhou told me before. He said that it's our honor to give our quotas to the 2 of you. Moreover, he's certain that the 2 of you can help our divine Jade Ancient Pavilion rise to the top 10 in the Great Hunt. Although I can't see your exact cultivation base, I know that you should be at the Ancient Star Transformation Realm. However, there are so many geniuses in this Great Hunt. Ancient Star Transformation Realm cultivators are as common as carps crossing the river. Can you really stand out and help our divine Jade Ancient Pavilion enter the top 10? The blue-robed girl rolled her eyes and said in a low voice, I think that Suzhou is just bragging. The guy doesn't seem to have any outstanding abilities. How could he possibly help our divine Jade Ancient Pavilion achieve a good result in the top 10 of the Great Hunt? The corners of Zhuan's mouth curled slightly, and he said indifferently, Top 10? Speaking until here, Zhuan shook his head. Yuji frowned slightly. When she saw the young man in front of her shake his head, she was very disappointed in her heart. Although she did not know Suzhou's background, she also knew that Suzhou's strength was very powerful. Even she was stunned. Originally, she thought that the people that Suzhou introduced, even if they were weaker than Suzhou, would be much stronger than the juniors of their divine Jade Ancient Pavilion participating in the Great Hunt this time. But she did not expect that this young man in front of her actually had no confidence. This made Yuji feel that it was a pity to give out 2 quotas. You're really straightforward. To actually admit defeat so quickly. The blue-robed girl had a displeased look. Toward Zhuan shaking his head, she naturally interpreted it as a lack of confidence. You guys misunderstood. I shook my head because Suzhou still held back some of my strength. If I join, not to mention the top 10, I can also help your divine Jade Ancient Pavilion get first place, Zhuan said indifferently. The moment these words came out, it was like a sudden clap of thunder, shocking the 2 girls until they were stunned. You're bragging, right? First place? That's simply impossible. The blue-robed girl shook her head and smiled coldly. Believe it or not, it's up to you. Zhuan shrugged his shoulders and did not explain too much. Sometimes, expending effort to explain was just a thankless action. It was far from as effective as actual action. Hence, Zhuan simply closed both eyes slightly and did not speak anymore. I believe you. I only hope that you can remember what you said today. Yuji suddenly opened her mouth, causing the blue-robed girl to be extremely surprised. Even Zhuan also gave Yuji a glance in surprise. This Yuji and him merely met by chance and had never seen his strength before. Yet, she believed that he was not bragging. This made Zhuan take another look at the cold girl before his eyes. However, what Zhuan did not know was that although Yuji did not know Zhuan's ability, she was deeply aware of the prowess of Suzhou who introduced him. Hence, she was willing to believe that Zhuan was hiding his strength. Luan Yu, the 2 of you will be teammates from now on. I've already told you that you must avoid suspicion between teammates. After the big hunt begins, you might still have to rely on Zhuan. Yu rather cautiously lectured the blue-robed girl. Although the blue-robed girl called Luan Yu was still slightly unconvinced, she did not dare disobey her master's teachings. She lowered her head and said, "Oh." At the same time, the beautiful lady boss brought over 2 jugs of chaotic divine nectar. Zhuowen poured a cup for Yu and the blue-robed girl. Then, he started to chat with them. Luan Yu obviously still had the character of a young girl. Although she was not too fond of Zhuowen, she was unable to resist the rich wine fragrance emitted by the chaotic divine nectar. Originally, she snorted coldly and was disdainful of the wine that Zhuowen personally poured for her. However, she was still unable to resist the temptation of the wine fragrance. She took a deep breath and swallowed her saliva before completely throwing away her armor and suffering a crushing defeat. Zhuowen looked at the young girl who was holding the wine cup and tasting the sweet and mellow chaotic divine nectar while revealing an intoxicated expression. He was rather amused in his heart. Chapter 4199. Di Luo Square was the core of Di Luo City. Around the square, there were 4 giant stone pillars. On the surface of the pillars, there was a relief of a giant dragon. The giant dragon relief had spirituality. It was lifelike, as if it was a real dragon. It wandered around the surface of the stone pillars and let out an earth-shaking dragon roar. The 4 giant stone pillars were not ordinary. In fact, it was a second sky eternal level array. Once it was activated, the giant dragon relief in the stone pillars would turn into a real dragon. It would unleash its terrifying dragon power and kill all the enemies that were a threat. Normally, Di Luo Square was a forbidden area in Di Luo City. Ordinary cultivators were not qualified to get close to it. But today, this square, which symbolized Di Luo City, was bustling with people. Moreover, there were still streams of light coming from all over Di Luo City. Their target was none other than Di Luo Square. In an inconspicuous inn in the northeast corner of Di Luo City, a slender young man slowly walked out of the inn while holding the hand of a cute little girl. "It's so lively. Today is the day of the big hunt." The young man raised his head and looked at the sky above Di Luo City. There was a strange light in his eyes. "Disciple, since we parted ways with the divine Jade Ancient Pavilion's master, she hasn't contacted us. Are we being ignored?" Beside the young man, the cute and pretty little girl, who was like a porcelain doll, puffed up her cheeks and complained in an old-fashioned way. "Just now, she sent me a message. She asked us to gather at Di Luo Square." The young man smiled. "Oh." The little girl curled her lips. The young man stood at the entrance of the inn. He raised his head and looked at a window on the 3rd floor of the inn. He waved his right hand and left the inn with the little girl. Behind the window where the young man was looking, a slender figure stood with his hands behind his back. He silently watched the 2 figures leave. "Brother Zhua, the opponents in the open are not a problem for you in the big hunt. The real trouble is those who sneak in. I hope that you can achieve victory in the big hunt and successfully enter the 7 emotions and 6 desires mountain." Duan Jipeng's lips moved slightly as he muttered to himself in a voice that only he could hear. Di Luo Square was filled with people, but it wasn't crowded. The cultivators who entered the square were basically grouped into groups and lined up in an orderly manner. Therefore, although there were many people in the square, it was not chaotic. In the western corner of the square, a team of more than 10 people was waiting with raised heads. The leader of this team was a tall, well-developed, and cold woman. She was dressed in a long white robe with a long sword hanging from her waist. Her skin was fair and delicate, and she attracted a lot of heated gazes. Beside the white-robed woman, there was a blue-clothed young girl. Although her appearance couldn't be considered beautiful, she was fresh and pleasant. She could be considered a pretty girl from a humble family. The 2 women were Jade Skin and Luan Yu from the Divine Jade Ancient Pavilion. "Pavilion Master, our Divine Jade Ancient Pavilion doesn't have many quotas for the big hunt, only 5. Now you've given 2 quotas to outsiders. Isn't this a bit too much?" At the back of the team, an elegant and handsome young man walked out. He frowned and said to Jade Skin with slight displeasure. Yuji glanced at the handsome young man and sighed quietly in her heart. She was naturally aware that the other members of the group would be dissatisfied with her taking out 2 quotas. However, she did not expect that the eldest disciple, Duan Miyuki, whom she valued the most, would actually step out to oppose her. I owe that person a favor, so I'm giving out 2 quotas to repay the favor. Miyuki, you've been with me for so long, so you should know my character. I don't like to owe people favors, Jade Skin said calmly. But this is unfair to 5th junior brother and 6th junior brother. The quota was originally theirs, but now that the big hunt is about to begin, they have somehow lost the quota. As Duan Miyuki spoke, he could not help but look at the 2 dejected youths at the back of the group. Don't worry, after the big hunt is over, I'll compensate 5th junior brother and 6th junior brother. And as far as I know, the 2 who got the quotas are quite strong, so it's good for our divine Jade Ancient Pavilion, Jade Skin said solemnly. Pavilion Master, I've heard from Junior Sister that there's a little girl with a cultivation base that hasn't even reached the ancient star transformation realm. Such a fellow will only drag our team down. I refuse to accept this. 5th junior brother suddenly retorted. And the other person even said that he wants our divine Jade Ancient Pavilion to take first place in the big hunt? Where did his confidence come from? Does he really think that the big hunt is a game? 6th junior brother said unhappily. Yuji frowned and glared at Yu fiercely. The latter quickly shrank back and lowered her head. Pavilion Master, no matter what, we're not convinced. Unless that person is really strong enough to convince me, the 5th junior brother said with righteous indignation. Jade Skin sighed in her heart. She knew that they were in a difficult situation now. Looking at the situation, 5th junior brother and 6th junior brother were going to challenge Zhuowen. She wasn't worried about Zhuowen, but about 5th junior brother and 6th junior brother. Although she had only met Zhuowen once, and Zhuowen hadn't revealed his aura the last time, she was still very confident. But she could keenly feel that Zhuowen gave her a strong sense of danger. It was as if she wasn't facing an ancient star transformation cultivator, but an expert of the great carefree realm who was stronger than her. Although she didn't think that Zhuowen was stronger than her, she knew that he was definitely much stronger than 5th junior brother and 6th junior brother. When Jade Skin was about to speak, she seemed to have sensed something. She raised her head, and her beautiful eyes locked onto a stream of light coming from the northeast. That stream of light was inconspicuous. After approaching Delois Square, it directly fell towards the Divine Jade Ancient Pavilion's team. The descent of this ray of light naturally attracted the attention of many nearby cultivators. However, when they discovered that it was only an ordinary young man and a little girl with a weak aura, they all turned their gazes away with a lack of interest. Zhuowen looked at the woman in a moon-white robe, not far away. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile, and he went up to greet her. Pavilion Master Jade Skin. Zhuowen greeted Jade Skin, and his gaze fell on the team behind Jade Skin. The dozen people behind Jade Skin were naturally sizing up the young man in front of them and the little girl who was holding the young man's hand. However, their gazes were not friendly at all. Instead, they were rather aggressive. Are you Zhuowen who took away 2 of our divine, Jade, Ancient Pavilion's quotas? In my opinion, your cultivation isn't very good. Your aura isn't obvious. I even suspect that you're an ancient star transformation cultivator. 5th junior brother and 6th junior brother had been holding back their anger. Now that they saw the culprit who took their quotas appear, they immediately came out and unceremoniously condemned Zhuowen. Their tone was very unfriendly. Chapter 4200. 5th brother, 6th brother, how dare you? Is it because my words don't work on you anymore? Yuji suddenly scolded loudly. 5th brother and 6th brother, who were about to continue denouncing Zhuowen, stopped abruptly. They looked at Yuji with some grievances, and then glared at Zhuowen fiercely. They fell silent. I'm sorry, Zhuowen. I didn't teach you well. Yuji looked at Zhuowen apologetically. Zhuowen shook his head and said with a smile, it's okay. In Zhuowen's eyes, the 2 young men who had spoken ill of him were not worth mentioning. How could the two of them know his ability and strength? Lan, the clothed girl, Wan Yu, curled her lips in displeasure when she saw Zhua Wen's carefree appearance. Duan, a layer of haze appeared in Muqi's eyes, but he was smart enough to see that Yuji had made up his mind. Therefore, he did not provoke Yuji again. Zhuan, in this jade slip, was a list of the major and powerful forces that were participating in the big hunting this time. I've collected this information during this period of time. You can take a look and prepare early. Yuji took out a jade slip, handed it to Zhuan, and said softly. Zhuan, when nodded, took the jade slip and scanned it with his divine sense. After a long time, Zhuan came back to his senses and revealed a thoughtful look. The jade slip that Yuji gave him recorded the forces of the Nuwa domain very thoroughly. In the Nuwa domain, the most powerful force was undoubtedly the Nuwa clan. Under the Nuwa clan, there were 7 huge forces with deep foundations and long histories. They were also the 7 forces that had the most far-reaching influence in the Nuwa domain. Zhuan. These 7 forces were the 5 Immortals Divine Sect, the Moon-Chopping Saint Pavilion, the Tathagata Buddhist Sect, the Limitless Demon Sect, the Fire Beacon Academy, the Water Moon Fantasy House, and the 3 Prison of God. In the previous big hunts, the juniors of these 7 forces were often able to rank in the top 10 in the big hunt. It could be said that they were a huge stone in the hearts of most forces. Zhuan. In every big hunting, these 7 forces would each occupy a giant city in a tacit understanding. There would never be 2 forces in the same giant city. It was common knowledge that in the early stages of the Great Hunting Mission, the outskirts of the Golden Crow Mountains were divided into 7 regions. After the first round of eliminations, the teams that advanced from the 7 regions were allowed to enter the Golden Crow Mountains and undergo a new round of eliminations. While the 7 giant cities were located in 7 different parts of the Black Gold Mountain Range, representing the entrances to the 7 regions. In the first round of elimination, it was natural that the 7 forces would not be assigned to the same giant city. After all, if they encountered each other in advance, it was inevitable that an extremely terrifying collision would erupt. At that time, both sides would suffer. The 7 great forces obviously wouldn't allow this to happen. Roots, according to the information provided by Yuji, the Limitless Demon Sect was one of the 7 forces stationed in Luo City. Division in addition, there were 3 other forces stationed in Luo City that could not be underestimated. This is although the 3 forces couldn't be compared to the 7 major forces, they were still first-rate forces with extraordinary foundations. In under Zhuan's inquiry, Jade sure didn't hide anything and spoke the names of these 3 factions. This is the 3 factions were the Gantian Prefecture, the Great Mercy Sword Sect, and the True Martial Sect. In Luo City, these 3 factions should be the 3 strongest forces after the Limitless Demon Sect. Why are you asking so much? With the strength of our divine Jade Ancient Pavilion, it's still a question whether we can pass the first round. Don't tell me you still think you can compete with the Gantian Prefecture and the Great Mercy Sword Sect? Suddenly, a voice that was neither feminine nor masculine was heard, which attracted Zhuan's attention. Zhuan raised his head and saw a handsome young man in the team looking at him with an unfriendly gaze. Zhuan was not unfamiliar with this young man. When Jade introduced the various major forces in Luo City to him, he also briefly introduced the Divine Jade Ancient Pavilion's team in the Great Hunting Mission. This is the handsome young man was the eldest senior brother of the Divine Jade Ancient Pavilion, Duan Muki. He was considered the leader of the younger generation of the Divine Jade Ancient Pavilion and had a pivotal position among the younger generation. Not to mention the Gantian Prefecture and the Great Mercy Sword Sect. Even the Limitless Demon Sect's team may not be able to enter my eyes, Zhuan said lightly. Duan Muki snorted coldly, his eyes flashing with undisguised contempt. This guy was simply crazy. He did not even put the Limitless Demon Sect in his eyes. Who did he think he was? In the Divine Jade Ancient Pavilion's team, the rest of the team members also sneered in their hearts, their attitude towards Zhuan becoming more and more disgusted. Luan Jadeshi, shook his head. His heart was filled with helplessness and disappointment. At this critical moment, this Zhuoan was actually still bragging. Just at this moment, the entire square was in an uproar, which attracted the attention of Zhuoan and the rest. They saw that not far away in the sky, a thick black cloud that was as thick as liquid was quickly sweeping over. The aura of the black cloud was extremely vast and terrifying. It was full of demonic nature, which made people's faces change drastically. Just in the thick black cloud, a team of more than 10 people was faintly discernible. One could vaguely see that there were men and women in this team, and all of them were wearing exquisitely crafted black robes. The black cloud descended above the square, and a terrifying demonic aura fell like rain, covering the entire square. Just at this time, the square was in chaos. Many cultivators with insufficient cultivation were directly forced to kneel on the ground. On the divine jade ancient pavilion side, Yuji let out a muffled groan as her delicate body trembled. However, her delicate body remained upright as she stood on the spot, staring fixedly at the black cloud in the sky. Jade Yuji was an expert of the great calamity of heaven and earth. Moreover, she was barely able to hold on. Wanyu, Duan Miyuki, and the other juniors in the team were naturally in a worse state. The ones who were slightly better were Duan Miyuki and Wanyu, but they were also kneeling on one knee, their faces as pale as paper. Spin Duan Miyuki and Wanyu's eyes widened as they looked at the young man, standing beside Yuji in disbelief. The young man's expression was calm as he strolled leisurely. His right hand was holding the little girl's hand as he raised his head to look at the black cloud in the sky and fell into deep thought. In the square, those who could withstand this terrifying demonic aura and not kneel on the ground were all supreme experts above the great calamity of heaven and earth. However, all the cultivators below the great calamity of heaven and earth were in an extremely sorry state. They were either kneeling or prostrating. The worst-case scenario was that they had directly fainted. However, this young man was clearly only at the ancient star transformation realm, but he was not affected by the demonic aura at all. Moreover, he looked even calmer than their pavilion master Yuji. Yuji naturally noticed that the young man beside her was at ease. Her beautiful eyes revealed a trace of disbelief, but it was quickly covered by a wisp of light as she looked at the young man beside her with bright eyes. "Haha, Brother Molan, long time no see." A thick voice, like a great bell, came from the depths of Luo City. None the sound waves were like the spring rain, permeating the entire square, as if moistening things silently and gently dissolving the terrifying demonic aura. In the square, the people in a sorry state breathed a sigh of relief. They stood up one after another and looked towards the depths of Luo City. Chapter 42:01. Phew! It's Emperor City's city lord, Ling Luo. Yuji heaved a sigh of relief. Looking at the burly man from the depths of Emperor Luo City, his eyes revealed a relaxed expression. Limitless demon Sex Mo Lan and Emperor City's city lord, Ling Luo. Zhuan's eyes revealed a contemplative expression as he muttered to himself. He had naturally heard of these two people from Yuji. Mo Lan was the vice leader of the Limitless Demon sect. His cultivation was already at the early stage of the cosmic Dharma plane, and his strength was unfathomable. And as the city lord of Emperor Luo City, Ling Luo's cultivation was not weaker than Mo Lan's. Otherwise, he would not have been able to easily resist the terrifying demonic aura that Mo Lan deliberately released. They were both at the early stage of the cosmic Dharma plane, but Zhuan could feel that Ling Luo and Mo Lan's aura were actually weaker than Duan Jiping's. From this, it could be seen that although Duan Jiping had just entered the cosmic Dharma plane not long ago, his battle strength was already quite impressive. In addition, he had the complete astral weapon, Dark Chakra, so his battle strength was probably even stronger than he had imagined. In the sky above the square, the thick and sticky black clouds suddenly dispersed, revealing a group of people. The leader was a middle-aged man with a pale complexion. He wore a long robe with black stripes, and his black shoulder-length hair was slightly curly. Billowing demonic aura surged around the middle-aged man, like poisonous snakes that were ready to hunt, locking onto any living creatures that were looking at him. In the square, many cultivators deliberately avoided looking at the middle-aged man, not daring to blatantly look at him. And he was the vice leader of the limitless demon sect, Emolan. When Ling Luo called out Emolan's name, there was even a burst of noise in the square. After all, the limitless demon sect had a great reputation in the Nuwa domain. Of course, it was basically a bad reputation, enough to be described as notorious. The demonic cultivators from the limitless demon sect were cruel and ruthless, doing things as they pleased, without any bottom line. They would kill at the slightest disagreement. Basically, they were a group of unfathomable and troublesome characters that could not be provoked. Just now, in any of the other 7 forces, it was impossible for a cosmic dharma plane expert to deliberately release such an unfriendly aura to so many cultivators participating in the competition. Emolan looked at Ling Luo indifferently, nodded and said, "It's indeed been a long time. I almost killed you back then." Emolan's words were extremely shocking. Once these words came out, everyone in the plaza was stunned. Some of their gazes kept sweeping between Emolan and Ling Luo. It seemed that something unpleasant had happened between the two of them back then. Ling Luo coughed lightly. His complexion wasn't particularly good. He said, "It's already a matter of the past. What's the point of mentioning it? Now that the Limitless Demon Sex team has arrived, the teams that entered the Golden Crow Mountain Range from D. Luo City are basically all of the Limitless Demon Sex teams. Everyone's here," Emolan said indifferently. He glanced at Ling Luo, but did not say anything. Instead, he landed on D. Luo Square. The moment the Limitless Demon Sex team landed on the Doa Square, the surrounding teams retreated one after another as if avoiding the plague, maintaining a certain distance from the Limitless Demon Sex team. It's actually him. I really didn't expect that he would actually choose the Luo City's entrance." Zhuowen's gaze fell on a figure behind the Limitless Demon Sex team. His eyes couldn't help but narrow. There were more than 10 people in the Limitless Demon Sex team. Basically, they were all wearing black robes. The style was surprisingly similar, but there was a man in the team who was different. He was wearing a white robe and had a long sword at his waist. He didn't have the slightest demonic aura of a demonic cultivator. The white-robed man stood quietly behind Emolan. His gaze was calm, like an ancient well without ripples. Dian Shun, Zhuowen muttered to himself. He recognized the identity of the white-robed man. He was Dian Shun, ranked 15th on the Outer Realm Heavenly List. During the Battle of the Tomb, Dian Shun had explored together with Su Zhou and the others. Later, because Su Zhou and Ziyu left alone, Dian Shun, Fu Di, and the others parted ways. Obviously, Dian Shun should have gotten a spot from the Limitless Demon Sect. As for Su Zhou and Ziyu, the two of them left Di Luo City in order not to meet Zhuowen in advance. They went to 2 different giant cities as the entrances to Wujin Mountain Range. Although Dian Shun's appearance had been carefully changed, Zhuowen remembered his aura clearly. Of course, Zhuowen also understood that other than Dian Shun, there might be other geniuses on the Outer Realm Heavenly List hidden in Di Luo Square. It was just that most of them weren't as high-profile as Dian Shun. Who is this person? The number 1 person of the Limitless Demon Sect's younger generation, the most famous which in the Nuwa Realm, Black Lotus, is following behind this person obediently. Duan Yuki's surprised voice came from behind. The latter naturally also noticed the mysterious white-robed young man. His gaze couldn't help but fall on the respectful black-robed woman behind the white-robed young man. There was an unconcealable horror on his face. Black Lotus was the number 1 person of the younger generation of the demon sect in the Nuwa Realm. Her strength was extremely powerful. Although she hadn't entered the Outer Realm Heavenly List, the gap between her and the geniuses at the bottom of the list wasn't particularly big. However, Such a proud woman who could look down on most of the younger generation in the New realm was actually standing behind the white-robed young man with a respectful expression on her face. It was really rare to see such a scene. Yuji's beautiful eyes frowned slightly. She was also very curious about the white-robed young man standing between Mo Lan and Black Lotus. However, she thought about a lot of things in her mind, but she couldn't find any genius that matched this person. After the Limitless Demon Sex team landed on the square, Ling Luo let out a light breath and then said in a loud voice, "Everyone, welcome to D. Luo City." Everyone knows the purpose of coming to D. Luo City. Everyone knows. Today is the beginning of the big hunt. Today, Ling Luo wishes everyone to be victorious and obtain great opportunities in the Wujin mountain range. After Ling Luo said some polite words, he began to introduce the rules of the big hunt in detail. Zhuowen silently stood in the team and listened attentively. As Ling Luo explained, he had some understanding of the rules of the big hunt. It was said that there were more than 10,000 teams from various forces gathered from all over the New realm. The big and small forces were mixed together. These teams were scattered in the 7 giant cities, and each city was the entrance to enter the Wujin mountain range. They were ready to compete fiercely. The main activity area of the first round was the 7 giant cities, and the boundary was 10 billion miles away from the Wujin mountain range. Before the first round ended, the corresponding team would be eliminated immediately if they left the area without permission. Chapter 4202. However, even the Cosmos Tribulation liquid was an extremely important cultivation material for Cosmos Tribulation experts. In addition, the amount produced in the Cosmos world was not much, so Cosmos Tribulation experts rarely gave this divine liquid to others for cultivation. Of course, the Cosmos Tribulation liquid was even more useful for cultivators below the Cosmos Tribulation level. It could greatly increase their cultivation speed and even allow them to be reborn and become brand new. This was especially true for ancient star transformation cultivators. It was said that the more Cosmos Tribulation liquid they absorbed, the higher their chances of breaking through the Cosmos Tribulation. Moreover, after advancing to the Cosmos Tribulation, their strength would be much stronger than ordinary Cosmos Tribulation experts. Of course, the Cosmos Tribulation liquid was not only created by humans. When the heavens and earth were first created, the entire 100 outer domains was a barren land with endless calamities. The conditions were extremely harsh. During the terrifying calamities, some places would naturally produce a large amount of Cosmos Tribulation liquid. Moreover, the effects of the Cosmos Tribulation liquid formed naturally from the heavenly tribulation were often more obvious and powerful than those created by humans. According to Ling Luo's introduction, there were many ancient ruins in the Golden Crow mountain range. In those ruins, there were many Cosmos Tribulation liquid formed when the heavens and earth were first created. The rules of the first stage were very simple. The teams that entered the Golden Crow mountain range had to do their best to find Cosmos Tribulation liquid. If they wanted to successfully advance, they would need at least 10,000 Cosmos Tribulation liquid. The time limit is 1 month. If the amount of Cosmos Tribulation liquid you have cannot reach the standard within this month, you will be immediately eliminated. Of course, if you encounter a true danger, you can leave the Golden Crow mountain range early. Naturally, that will also be considered as elimination. Ling Luo's expression was calm. Suddenly, he waved his sleeve. Immediately, many tall maids walked out from behind the curtain behind him. These maids held black wooden trays with both hands. On the trays, there was a silver bracelet. The color and style of the bracelet on each tray were exactly the same. This is a record bracelet. At the same time, it is also a spatial artifact. The Cosmos Tribulation liquid you obtain must be placed in this bracelet. If anyone secretly hides it, they will be immediately eliminated. Moreover, there is a teleportation array in the bracelet. If you encounter a life or death crisis, you can activate the array in the bracelet and immediately teleport back to D. Luo City from the Golden Crow mountain range. This bracelet is your proof of entry to the Golden Crow mountain range. Exchange it with the entry medallions in your hands. After Ling Luo finished speaking, he waved his sleeve, and the group of maids behind him walked into the plaza. They gave the bracelets to the cultivators who had nameplates. Zhuowen handed the 2 entry tokens to the maidservant in front of him. He took 2 bracelets and handed one of them to Shan Lingyun, who was beside him. He used his divine sense to examine the bracelets. Indeed, he found a teleportation array inside. In addition to the teleportation array, there were many exquisite restrictions in the bracelet. Their level was almost at the 2nd firmament of eternal grade. Everyone, please go to the Luo Divine Palace after you get the bracelets. The teleportation formation in the Divine Palace will take you to the Wujin mountain range, which is the closest to Di Luo City. As Ling Luo spoke, he led a group of people and headed towards the Di Luo Divine Palace. The Di Luo Divine Palace wasn't far. After a while, the group of people landed in front of a magnificent Divine Palace. The entire body of the Divine Palace was made of golden divine stones. It naturally emitted a golden light, adding a noble aura. Miyuki, you're the eldest senior brother. You must lead the rest of the people well. If you really can't handle it, don't force it. Just leave immediately. After all, safety is the most important thing. In front of the Divine Palace, Yuji began to exhort Duan Miyuki. Duan Miyuki nodded repeatedly and patted his chest as a guarantee. After Yuji finished exhorting, her beautiful eyes glanced at Zhuowen. She hesitated for a moment and said, Zhuowen, although I know you are not simple, the young geniuses of the 7 major forces are not simple. You don't have to fight for the first place for the Divine Jade Ancient Pavilion. Do what you can. If you really can't handle it, don't force it. Zhuowen nodded. He naturally understood the meaning behind Yuji's words. Yuji valued Duan Miyuki, Luan Yu, and the others very much. She saw them as the hope of the Divine Jade Ancient Pavilion in the future. She naturally didn't want Duan Miyuki and the others to die in the Golden Crow mountain range. Therefore, she told him that he shouldn't do it. Let's go in. At this moment, Ling Luo's voice sounded again. Then, the huge doors of the Divine Palace opened. The cultivators wearing the bracelets followed their team and entered the Divine Palace. Duan Miyuki, Luan Yu, and the others exchanged glances with Yuji and followed the flow of people into the Divine Palace. After entering the Divine Palace, a long corridor appeared in front of them. As they continued to walk in the corridor, they realized that the surrounding cultivators were getting fewer and fewer until only the 5 of them were left. What's going on? Where are the others? Among the 5, a young man with a scar on his face had a slight change in expression. He couldn't help but whisper. This young man with a scar on his face was called Zhou. In the younger generation of the Divine Jade Ancient Pavilion, his talent and strength were second only to Duan Miyuki and Luan Yu. Duan Miyuki and Luan Yu's expressions also changed slightly. There were clearly so many cultivators who entered this corridor that led to the depths of the Divine Palace with them at the beginning. Why did they suddenly disappear, leaving only the 5 of them in the Divine Jade Ancient Pavilion's team? What's there to be surprised about? You guys are really stupid. Can't you see that this corridor is a teleportation corridor? And it's the kind that teleports randomly. The other teams must have been teleported to other places. Shan Lingyun held Zhuowen's hand and looked at Duan Miyuki and the other 2 who were making a fuss about nothing. Duan Miyuki and the other 2's faces were slightly red, and they were slightly annoyed. This little girl's cultivation was clearly not that high, but she actually dared to lecture them. Of course I know that. Since you guys are borrowing the quota of the Divine Jade Ancient Pavilion, then you have to listen to our arrangements. Now that I'm the team leader of this team, after entering the Golden Crow mountain range, you have to listen to me. Duan Miyuki looked at Zhuowen with a stern expression that brooked no argument. Shan Lingyun pouted and clenched her fists. Just as she was about to open her mouth to refute, she was stopped by Zhuowen. All right, we'll be relying on Brother Duan for this period of time, Zhuowen said with a smile. The mountain of 7 emotions and 6 desires was extremely deep in the Golden Crow mountain range. The first round of the big hunt was at the periphery of the Golden Crow mountain range. Zhuowen had no way of coming into contact with the mountain of 7 emotions and 6 desires. Hence, he really did not care who was the leader, as long as they could successfully advance to the first round. Duan Yuki looked at Zhuowen in surprise. He originally thought that the latter would show a look of dissatisfaction, but he did not expect Zhuowen to be so calm. Zhuowen was so calm that it made him a little unhappy. Looks like this guy doesn't have any real ability. He actually admitted defeat so quickly. Thinking about it, the reason why he was able to remain unscathed under the demonic aura at the Deluois Square was probably because he relied on some treasure that could resist the demonic aura. Chapter 42:03. When the team from the Divine Jade Ancient Pavilion finally walked out of the corridor, they felt that the scenery in front of them had changed. They were no longer in the dark environment of the corridor, but had entered the Golden Crow mountain range. The Golden Crow mountain range was filled with towering ancient trees, overlapping mountains, immortal fog, and knife-like cliffs. The entire mountain range was boundless, as if there was no end to it. Occasionally, deafening and terrifying howls could be heard from the depths of the mountain range. The terrifying sound formed invisible sound waves that swept across, shaking the heartstrings of those who heard it. They could not help but feel terrified. At the front of the team, Duan Yuki's face was extremely grave, and his palms were slightly sweaty. Although the beast's howls were very far away from them, he could clearly feel the strength of the beast's owner. Just the sound waves alone made his scalp tingle. If he were to face the giant beast directly, he was afraid that he would die. Everyone, the Golden Crow mountain range is full of danger. Although we are only at the periphery, we should not underestimate it. We must act cautiously and never act recklessly. Duan Yuki said in a low voice. Luan Yu and Zhou Yu nodded quickly, and their eyes were filled with intense nervousness. Their cultivation strength could only be considered as below average in the big hunting team. Any team that they encountered would be stronger than them, so they had to act cautiously. Zhuowen looked at the nervous Duan Yuki and the other two and shook his head secretly. He knew that with their current performance and mentality, they might not even pass the first round. From today onwards, we will go our separate ways. This is my communication jade amulet. On the last day, or if you are in danger, you can use this communication jade amulet to contact me, and I will rush over to meet you. Zhuowen took out a communication jade amulet and threw it to Luan Yu. You are not coming with us? Luan Yu's beautiful eyes widened as she asked in disbelief. I will not go with you. Goodbye. After Zhuowen finished speaking, he took Shan Lingyun and flew in the other direction of the Golden Crow mountain range. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared into the depths of the dense forest. Duan Yuki, Luan Yu, and Zhou Yu looked at each other. They did not expect Zhuowen to part ways with them as soon as they entered the Golden Crow mountain range. They are too irresponsible. Although they might not be very strong, they still have strength in numbers. Now, our team only has 3 people, Zhou Yu said somewhat angrily. Duan Yuki and Luan Yu were also quite angry, but there was nothing they could do. After all, Zhuowen and the others had already gone far away. It was obviously impossible for them to chase after them. The 2 spots we gave them were wasted. Our team has no hope. Duan Yuki slammed his fist on the ancient tree beside him. He was furious. Senior brother Duan, let's leave this place first. During this month, try to be as careful as possible and avoid clashing with other teams. It would be best if we can obtain the Cosmic Tribulation Liquid, but if not, don't force it. Luan Yu sighed. That's the only way. Duan Yuki was somewhat dejected. Then, he led Zhou Yu and Luan Yu in another direction. They were thoroughly disappointed in Zhuowen. Disciple, is it really okay for us to part ways with them just like this? On a towering ancient tree, Zhuowen and Shan Lingyun stopped. Shan Lingyun couldn't help but look behind her. Her big watery eyes were full of worry. Zhuan's eyes were calm as he said, Master, don't worry. Their communication jade talismans have a temporary teleportation formation set up by me. If they're in danger, they can really contact me. I will naturally go and save them. Moreover, we are not familiar with them. In addition, they are too weak. It is inevitable that it will be inefficient to act together. Moreover, some things are not easy to do. Shan Lingyun's big, watery eyes rolled as she smiled and said, Disciple, you want to find as much cosmic tribulation liquid as possible and use it for yourself. Zhuan smiled and said, The city lord of Di Luo City, Ling Luo, said that the condition to pass the first stage is 10,000 drops of cosmic tribulation liquid. In other words, we only need to collect 10,000 drops of cosmic tribulation liquid and place them in the bracelet. Doesn't it belong to the winner by default? Shan Lingyun's beautiful eyes lit up. She finally knew what Zhuan was planning. Disciple, Ling Luo also said that we cannot hide the cosmic tribulation liquid. If we do, we will be eliminated immediately, Shan Lingyun said with a frown. Zhuan smiled faintly and said, This is indeed a big problem for the other contestants. However, it is not a problem for me. In this bracelet, there is an extremely exquisite and complicated surveillance formation hidden. Although I cannot break this surveillance formation, I can block it for a while. I can still block it for a period of time. Hearing this, Shan Lingyun finally understood why Zhuan wanted to leave the team. Duan Muqi, Wan Yu, and the others were not friends with them. If they didn't leave the team, it would be difficult for them to hide the cosmic tribulation liquid. Once they found out, Duan Muqi and the others might report them. There were many dilapidated small relics in the Golden Crow mountain range. These relics were left behind from the Antiquity Age. Of course, because the environment in the Antiquity Age was too harsh, the inheritance and treasures in these small relics were basically destroyed. However, new things were born in them. This was the cosmic tribulation liquid. Zhuan and Shan Lingyun ran all the way. Under the guidance of Shan Lingyun's spiritual language technique, they arrived at the nearest relic. This was a rather vast swamp. On the dark surface of the water, there was a dense purple-black fog. Moreover, there was an unpleasant and nauseating odor coming from the swamp. This is miasma. It is very poisonous. Disciple, be careful. Shan Lingyun looked at the strange purple-black fog that pervaded the swamp in front of her. Her small face was full of solemnity. Zhuan smiled slightly. After sending Shan Lingyun into the parallel universe, he rushed into the depths of the swamp. As soon as he entered the swamp, the billowing miasma rushed into Zhuan's acupoints like maggots in a corpse. Zhuan did not stop it. Instead, he activated the primordial technique. Instantly, the poisonous miasma was refined by the primordial technique. The primordial technique had the characteristic of being able to absorb everything. Anything that was a threat, once it entered his body, would basically be completely refined by the primordial technique, whether it was poisonous gas, divine souls, or anything else. Chapter 4204. In the depths of the swamp, a group of people was carefully moving forward. There were a total of 7 people in this group, and all of them had divine power forming an energy membrane around their bodies to resist the miasma around them. The person in the lead was a young female cultivator with a hot figure and a pretty face. The female cultivator looked at the shifty-eyed man beside her and frowned. Lu Ho, are you sure that there are ruins in the depths of this swamp? Yes, this swamp is so strange. We have encountered many fierce beasts and monsters. We have also walked for so long, but we have not seen the shadow of the ruins. Another strong young man complained with some dissatisfaction. The shifty-eyed man named Lu Ho quickly said, Eldest senior sister, don't worry. There must be ruins in this swamp. You all know that the ruins of the Golden Crow mountain range exist in dangerous places. This swamp is not simple. In addition, I have heard from senior brother who participated in the last great hunt that the ruins in this swamp really exist. Hearing this, the female cultivator with the hot figure was still a little doubtful, but she did not refute. She also knew that this Lu Ho had a good network in the sect, so the information he could gather was naturally much more than them. Look, there seems to be something in front of us. Suddenly, someone in the group exclaimed, immediately attracting the attention of the others. In the depths of the thick fog ahead, there was a pillar-like shadow standing there quietly for a long time. Let's go take a look. The hot female cultivator gave the order, and the group sped up. After a while, they approached the hazy black shadow. Only then did they realize that it was a stone pillar that was more than 10 feet tall. On the surface of the stone pillar, there were all kinds of strange beasts engraved on it. In between the engravings of the strange beasts, there were strange patterns. Behind the stone pillar, there was a ruin that looked like a palace. It really is a ruin. Lu Ho, you have done a great job. Everyone in the group cheered and quickly rushed towards the ruins behind the stone pillar. Even the hot female cultivator was no exception. Lu Ho followed at the back, coldly watching the group enter the ruins. The area of the ruins was quite vast, and from the various signs, it could be seen that the ruins used to be an extremely large group of palaces. The Chinko and Tribulation liquid was usually found at the bottom of these ruins. Everyone began to dig through the ruins, and their faces were filled with ecstasy. However, they didn't notice that Lu Ho was silently standing by the stone pillar. He didn't show any signs of going past the stone pillar. Instead, he took out a pitch-black disc. The hot female cultivator was the first to discover that Lu Ho wasn't there. She quickly looked behind her and saw that there was something wrong with Lu Ho's expression. Lu Ho threw the disc in his hand over. Instantly, the ancient and mottled stone pillar emitted an extremely blazing light. The strange beasts engraved on the surface of the stone pillars seemed to have come to life. They actually jumped out of the stone pillars one by one, bursting out with terrifying roars. Lu Ho, what are you doing? The pretty face of the female cultivator with a hot figure changed slightly, and she couldn't help but scold the shifty-eyed man behind the stone pillar. The other members who were digging in the ruins also reacted to the situation. Seeing the terrifying exotic beasts pouncing at them one after another, their faces turned ugly. They naturally also saw Lu Ho behind the stone pillar with a cold smile on his face. Combined with the words of the female cultivator, they naturally understood that all of this was Lu Ho's doing. Hee, I don't want to do anything. I just want to use you as living sacrifices. Lu Ho laughed wildly. What? What do you mean? Are these ruins fake? In the ruins, someone shouted with an unnatural expression. Fake? No, I'm not lying to you. These ruins are real. It's just that these ruins are a little special. The restrictions on the surface of these ruins are not ordinary. They require a certain number of sacrifices to open. And now, you have become the key to opening these ruins. Enjoy these last moments. Ha ha ha. Lu Ho laughed sinisterly. Roar, roar, roar. Terrifying beasts flew over, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws as they attacked the people in the ruins. Everyone had no choice but to take out their respective divine artifacts and methods to struggle against these strange and powerful beasts. Lu Ho, are you crazy? We're from the same sect. What good will it do you if you sacrifice us? Without us, you still won't be able to pass the first stage of the Grey Hunt. A young man shouted in panic. Lu Ho laughed. His face began to wriggle, and his shifty-looking face changed into a fair-skinned young man with an aquiline nose. I'm not Lu Ho. The real Lu Ho has already been secretly killed by me. The young man with an aquiline nose smiled faintly. Who are you? The female cultivator's expression changed drastically. She didn't expect this person to be an imposter. Zhou Jin of the Annihilation Ridge sect. The young man with an aquiline nose said slowly. As soon as he said this, the people struggling in the ruins all changed their expressions. The Annihilation Ridge sect? The female cultivator gasped. The Annihilation Ridge sect was ranked in the top 30 among the many forces in the New Realm. Whether it was in terms of background or strength, they were far more powerful than the Fire Spirit sect. In the Diluo City area, the Annihilation Ridge sect could be said to be second only to the Limitless Demon sect, the Chichen Prefecture, the Great Compassion Sword sect, and the True Martial sect. They were a powerful team that would definitely pass the first stage. The female cultivator didn't expect that the Fire Spirit sect would be so unlucky to be targeted by such a terrifying team as soon as they entered the Black Gold Mountain Range. Where are the others from the Annihilation Ridge sect? The female cultivator couldn't help but look around vigilantly after defeating a beast. Zhou Jin's lips curled into a mocking smile. Who does the Fire Spirit sect think you are? You're not worthy of the Annihilation Ridge sect's team. I can do it alone. The others have gone to search for other ruins. After I kill you and collect the Cosmic Tribulation liquid in these ruins, I'll meet up with them. Then you can go see the King of Hell. After saying that, Zhou Jin's right hand flashed with a strange black light and landed on the stone pillar in front of him. Suddenly, a white flame burst out from the stone pillar and turned into a white fire Jiao dragon, gushing out of the stone pillar. Suddenly, one of the team members in the ruins was careless, and the white fire dragon found an opportunity to break through his defense and swallow him into its stomach. A scream rang out, but it only lasted for a moment before it stopped abruptly. The team member was immediately burned to ashes by the white flames. Waves of essence merged into the depths of the ruins at a speed visible to the naked eye. It's over. When the other team members saw how terrifying the fire dragon was, despair rose in their hearts. The smile on Zhou Jin's lips grew wider, but soon he suddenly turned around and looked into the depths of the thick miasma behind him. He sensed that an aura was rushing toward him quickly. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly, the thick miasma behind him was blasted apart by some kind of force, forming two opposing miasma walls. A young man with a cold expression was swiftly rushing over from one of the paths in the middle. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of the stone pillar. He hovered in midair and looked down indifferently at Zhou Jin, whose expression had changed slightly. Chapter 42:05. The young man hovered above the stone pillar. The miasma around him sank down as if it was worshipping an emperor. Zhou Jin frowned slightly. He looked at the young man above the stone pillar and asked coldly, "Who are you?" The young man slowly lowered his head and looked down at Zhou Jin. His eyes were blazing with a cold light. Zhou Jin felt a chill, and his expression changed slightly. His senses were quite sharp. He could sense that the young man in front of him was very powerful. He should be at the peak of the Ancient Star Transformation Realm. Although Jin was also at the peak of the Ancient Star Transformation Realm, he had just reached the peak of the Ancient Star Transformation Realm. His strength was far inferior to ordinary peak Ancient Star Transformation Realm cultivators. Therefore, when he sensed that the young man was also at the peak of the Ancient Star Transformation Realm, he secretly complained. Since the young man outside the miasma was naturally Zhuowen, he went all the way into the depths of the swamp and finally found the ruins in the deepest part of the swamp. Therefore, he directly rushed over. He glanced at Zhou Jin, who was looking at him with fear, and the Fire Spirit sect members who were trapped in the ruins. His expression was cold. "There's cosmic tribulation liquid in these ruins, right?" Zhuowen said calmly. Zhou Jin was stunned. Then, his expression turned ugly. He said in a low voice, "Sir, I'm Zhou Jin from the World Annihilation Ridge sect. I think you've heard of the power of the World Annihilation Ridge sect. So please leave for the sake of the World Annihilation Ridge sect." Zhuowen's expression was cold. He looked at the nervous Zhou Jin and continued, "Are you threatening me? And what is the World Annihilation Ridge sect? I've never heard of it." Zhou Jin was furious. Jin was furious. Their World Annihilation Ridge sect was one of the top forces in Diluo City. However, this young man had never heard of the World Annihilation Ridge sect and even dared to say what it was. "Sir, I don't know where you're from, But you should know that our World Annihilation Ridge sect is at least one of the top 10 factions in Emperor Luo City in this big hunt. I think you know the weight of these words. Zhou Jin warned. Only Zhou Jin had just finished speaking when a terrifying gust of wind whistled past. Then, a palm appeared in front of him like a ghost. Zhou Jin roared angrily. Without even thinking, he summoned his natal lone star. Zhou Jin's natal star was white in color. The moment the massive white star appeared, the surrounding temperature plummeted. Everything within a radius of several thousand miles was affected by the terrifyingly low temperature. White snow began to fall, turning the entire ground into a world of white. He was now suppressed by Zhuowen's aura and could not move. He could not even activate the teleportation formation in his bracelet. Thump! In other words, he could not escape at all. Zhuowen's gaze fell on the ruins behind the stone pillar. Seeing the group of people from the fire spirit sect still struggling in the barrier, he asked indifferently, "What's the matter with them?" "There's a powerful barrier in this ruin. If you want to open it, you must have enough living sacrifices. They're the living sacrifices I lured into the barrier." Zhou Jin smiled ingratiatingly and answered everything he knew. Bitter the people from the fire spirit sect who were struggling were pale. Their eyes were filled with despair. They had just escaped from the tiger's den and entered the wolf's den. Look, they could not escape the fate of being sacrificed. Seeing that Zhuowen wasn't going to interfere, the female cultivator with the hot figure bit her lips and said in a deep voice, "Friend, I know of an even bigger relic. As long as you can save our lives, we are willing to hand over the information about that relic to you." One raised his eyebrows. Zhuowen did not intend to save these people when he knew that they were being used as living sacrifices by Zhou Jin. After entering the great hunting ground, everyone was an enemy. There was no morality or justice to speak of in this fight for the spoils of war. Now, however, the female cultivator suddenly mentioned that she had information about a bigger ruin, which aroused his interest. "How can I believe you?" Zhuowen asked indifferently. Female Shou sighed softly. She spread out her jade palm, and a jade slip appeared in her palm. She said in a deep voice, "The information about the ruins is in this jade slip, but we are now trapped in the barrier, so this jade slip can't be passed to you." So Zhuowen looked thoughtful. Seeing that the people from the fire spirit sect could not hold on any longer, he said to Zhou Jin, "You activated the barrier. Stop it." Chapter 4206. Zhou Jin smiled bitterly and said, "Fellow cultivator, I didn't set up this barrier, so I can't open it. I can only stop the sacrificial ritual inside the barrier." "Then stop the sacrificial ritual first," Zhuowen said indifferently. One with that, Zhou Jin sighed softly and formed a seal with both hands. The strange beasts on the ruins collapsed one after another, turning into waves of energy that merged back into the stone pillar. While the people of the fire spirit sect collapsed to the ground, their faces relaxed after being reborn. Zhuowen took off Zhou Jin's bracelet and sealed it. Then, he walked around the ruins and carefully examined it. "Fellow cultivator, don't waste your energy. This barrier is extremely powerful. Even a divine array master at the first firmament of the eternal grade may not be able to break it. If you break it with brute force, the entire ruins will collapse, and the cosmic tribulation liquid inside will disappear." Zhou Jin reminded him, "Do you mean that if I want to break this barrier, I have to sacrifice these people?" Zhuowen said indifferently. Zhou Jin nodded slightly, tacitly agreeing with Zhuowen's words. The people of the fire spirit sect suddenly became nervous. They had finally escaped from the tiger's mouth. Could it be that they couldn't escape death in the end? "Your Excellency, you promised me." The female cultivator with a hot figure bit her lower lip and begged in a pleading tone. Zhuo ignored the female cultivator. His gaze fell on the barrier in front of him as he silently deduced in his heart. His array Dao level had reached the peak of the first firmament of the eternal grade. He still had some confidence in breaking this barrier, but he needed some time. "Hua, The fire spirit sect saw that Zhuowen was constantly checking the barrier and showed no signs of sacrificing them. They all breathed a sigh of relief in their hearts. Does he plan to break this barrier himself? He really doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Zhou Jin frowned slightly and immediately guessed Zhuowen's intention. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly, and he sneered slightly. Zhua, when walked around the barrier 3 times, and once again came in front of the stone pillar that stood at the forefront of the ruins. He stretched out his right hand and placed it on the relief sculpture on the surface of the stone pillar. He carefully felt the texture of the relief sculpture, and a thoughtful look appeared in his eyes. He sat cross-legged in front of the stone pillar and formed a seal with both hands. Array patterns emerged from his hands like fish scales. This is after the dense array patterns left Zhuowen's hands. They stuck to the surface of the stone pillar like maggots. While after that, the surface of the stone pillar burst forth with an extremely blazing light. The reliefs seemed to have come to life as they actually broke free from the stone pillar and let out terrified howls. Chapter 4207. The cave was deep and boundless. Zhuowen had been in the cave for a full hour when he finally saw rays of golden light. The golden light spread all over the bottom of the cave like dazzling stars, constantly flashing. Zhuowen casually grabbed several streaks of golden light in his palm. His eyes were bright as he muttered to himself, "Sure enough, these are all Cosmos Tribulation liquid." After confirming the existence of the Cosmos Tribulation liquid, Zhuowen moved like lightning, quickly shuttling through the depths of the cave, frantically collecting all the Cosmos Tribulation liquid around him. By the time Zhuowen finished collecting all the Cosmos Tribulation liquid at the bottom of the cave, an hour had passed, and he had obtained 3,000 drops of Cosmos Tribulation liquid. Zhuowen did not put the Cosmos Tribulation liquid into his bracelet. Instead, he put the collected Cosmos Tribulation liquid aside, and then began to make gestures with both hands, forming lines of formation. This formation lines surged out like fish scales, covering the bracelet on his right hand. When all the formation lines had covered the bracelet completely, Zhuowen let out a sigh of relief, and then he slowly put the 3,000 drops of Cosmos Tribulation liquid into his macro world. Clang! After all the Cosmos Tribulation liquid entered his macro world, the bracelet on Zhuowen's right wrist did not change, and he was not teleported out. Only then did a relaxed smile appear at the corners of his mouth. He knew that his guess was right. As long as he blocked the monitoring formation in the bracelet, he could secretly take the Cosmos Tribulation liquid for his own use. Of course, this was not something an ordinary cultivator could do. After all, those who participated in this big hunt were all from the younger generation, and only a few of them knew about formations. Needless to say, they had the means to block the monitoring formation, which had reached the eternal level. Zhuowen guessed that even in the entire Nuar realm, there were probably no more than 5 people who could block the monitoring formation in the bracelet. And these people were usually eternal level formation masters, who were of noble status and high prestige. They were the targets that the major forces wanted to rope in. Naturally, they did not lack resources and would not condescend to participate in the big hunt. Zhuowen was only a rogue cultivator, and the Cosmos Tribulation liquid had unimaginable benefits for his cultivation. Naturally, he could not just collect 10,000 drops to complete the task. He had to collect as much as possible for his future cultivation. After putting away the Cosmos Tribulation liquid, Zhuowen smiled with satisfaction. He did not expect to obtain 3,000 drops of Cosmos Tribulation liquid on the first day of entering the periphery of the Golden Mountains. Moreover, the female cultivator of the Fire Spirit sect had another relic. Zhuo walked in front of Zhou Jin and squatted down. He patted the latter's face and said calmly, "Tell me, how long until your teammates arrive? Don't worry, I won't run away. I'll stand here and wait for your teammates." Zhou Jin's eyes flickered as a wisp of resentment flashed in the depths of his eyes. However, he still denied it. Bang! Zhou Jin had just denied it when Zhuo unhesitatingly stomped on Zhou Jin's chest. A terrifying power spread out, causing the surrounding ground to shake violently. Moreover, there was an explosion that sounded like an earthquake. The ground where Zhou Jin was directly collapsed, forming a huge and deep pit that was filled with cracks. Zhou Jin's pupils constricted, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was as pale as snow. He stared fixedly at Zhuo, his eyes filled with fear. "I don't like people lying. I'll ask you one more time. If you continue to lie, you can die. Tell me, how long until your teammates arrive?" Zhuo's right foot was still on Zhou Jin's chest. His voice was very calm, but it was filled with a strong, killing intent. Zhou Jin's heart turned cold. He spat out a mouthful of blood and said intermittently, "They're not far from here. They should be here soon. Don't kill me." The expressions of Rong Shuyao and the others changed drastically. They actually did not notice that Zhou Jin was secretly playing tricks. Annihilation, they had a deep understanding of how powerful the Apocalypse Ridge sect was. One must know that Zhou Jin alone had almost wiped out their team. Furthermore, Zhou Jin was merely an above-average member of the Apocalypse Ridge sect's team. It was clear how powerful the Apocalypse Ridge sect's team was. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. However, outside the swamp, there was a strong sound of something breaking through the air. After which, the crowd at the center of the swamp discovered that the miasma that lingered over the swamp all year round had suddenly dispersed. Intense light scattered down from the sky like a tent. Zhuo slowly raised his head and saw that over a dozen figures had appeared above him. Every single one of them had an extremely powerful aura, and even the weakest of them was around the same level as Rong Shuyao. This is the leader of this team, was a young man with a resolute expression. His shoulder-length hair was tied into a small braid around his ears. He looked capable and sharp. The World Annihilation Ridge sect's team is indeed here. That's the team leader of the World Annihilation Ridge sect, Gu Xuanjin. His strength is sufficient to rank in the top 10 among the group of geniuses in Diluo City. Rong Shuyao's beautiful eyes shrunk to the size of needles, and he couldn't help but lead everyone closer to Zhuo. Zhou Jin saw the people from the World Annihilation Ridge sect. He finally felt relieved. He knew that he could finally be saved. Although he was afraid of Zhuo's strength, he trusted Gu Xuanjin more. "Don't worry, I don't have any disloyalty. I just want to cooperate with you." Zhuo looked at Gu Xuanjin with a strange expression. He felt that this guy might be a little despicable. Gu Xuanjin's team was almost wiped out by him, and his secret technique was snatched away by him. Gu Xuanjin still wanted to cooperate with him. If it were him, Zhuo would not be so shameless as to follow him. Perhaps sensing the strange look in Zhuo's eyes, Gu Xuanjin laughed dryly and gave him a thumbs up. "Fellow Taoist, you don't have to look at me like that. Let me make it clear, I'm not despicable. I just think that you're strong enough. If you follow me, even if it's just soup, it's still very beneficial to me." Gu Xuanjin was very honest. Zhuo didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he told Gu Xuanjin his little plan. He did not realize that Gu Xuanjin, who looked so cold and aloof at first, was actually a little scoundrel. Zhuowen simply ignored Gu Xuanjun. He neither agreed nor rejected him, but continued to fly forward. Gu Xuanjun was not angry. Instead, he grinned and followed closely behind. Not long after, Zhuowen returned to the swamp once more. At this moment, the swamp was in a mess because of the battle between Zhuowen and Gu Xuanjun. The miasma that lingered in the swamp all year round had completely dissipated. Rong Shuyao, Shan Lingyun, and the others were standing beside a towering tree at the edge of the swamp, quietly waiting for Zhuowen. When Zhuowen arrived, they all came forward to welcome him. When Rong Shuyao saw Gu Xuanjun behind Zhuowen, her pretty face changed slightly. She immediately took out her divine artifact, and her beautiful eyes were full of hostility. The other cultivators of the fire spirit sect also came to their senses. They also took out their divine artifacts and looked at Gu Xuanjun, who was not far away. Gu Xuanjun was tactful. He landed on a big tree about 100 feet away from them and did not intend to get closer. "My disciple, what's going on? Didn't you go after Gu Xuanjun? Why did Gu Xuanjun follow you instead?" Shan Lingyun stepped forward and pointed at Gu Xuanjun, who was 100 feet behind Zhuowen. Her small face was full of confusion. Zhuowen revealed a helpless expression and recounted everything that had happened earlier in full detail. When everyone heard that, they were enlightened. They looked at Gu Xuanjun in the distance with a strange look in their eyes. Let's go to the abyssal bone wilderness first," Zhuowen said calmly. Rong Shuyao and the other cultivators of the fire spirit sect looked a little stiff. They sighed softly in their hearts, knowing that they could not escape this disaster. After all, Rong Shuyao had personally agreed. They had no choice but to follow Zhuowen to the abyssal bone wilderness. If we really encounter danger, we can only prioritize our lives. Even if we give up the qualification to the big hunt, it's something we can't do.